A massive NFC heavyweight battle of undefeateds takes place in week 4. Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes duke it out once again. The Ultimate NFL pregame show starts right now.
It's the Ultimate NFL pregame show. Every team, every game, every angle. The local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network going head-to-head on every matchup. It's the Ultimate NFL pregame show. Unprecedented insight, unrivaled passion, and unsurpassed knowledge. It's the Ultimate NFL pregame show. The Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Week 4 of the NFL is here, and we've got everything you need to know heading into the weekend from local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens, and from the primetime game of the Micah Parsons Bowl between the Cowboys and the Packers, the big 4 o'clock matchup in Kansas City, to why that Buccaneers and Eagles game of undefeateds is going to be a good one. We're going to go game by game to make you the most informed fan for game day with the help of our local experts across our network, the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's start with a look, not at the 1 p.m. slate, but we're going to dive into the 9:30 game. It is Ireland, the Steelers, and the Vikings battling it out. So we're going to dive into it with Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings, as well as Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers.
Moving on here with this crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Vikings and Locked On Steelers. Chris, so here's the real weakness on the offense. There's all this great stuff. We love the O-line. We love the pass catchers. There's a lot of talent on this offense. The Vikings fans are all really excited about. The quarterback situation has not been fun. J.J. McCarthy mostly struggled in 2 games. He's got a high ankle sprain now. Carson Wentz is in. He plays against Cincinnati like a backup. He misses some, leaves some meat on the bone, and it kind of doesn't matter because he had 2 defensive touchdowns and a run game explosion. The Vikings are going to have to do that again, I think. If this comes down to, all right, Carson Wentz, you're going to have to throw for 350, I don't see this working out for the Vikings. But how do the Steelers feel about going up against a backup quarterback that's largely just going to try to do a lot of really simple things, the stuff he can handle, and then like hope that the playmakers make plays?
I think that they are still preparing for this as if this is a veteran NFL quarterback that they need to respect. This isn't going to be a thing where like, oh, if we can just get him in bad situations, he'll hand the game to us. Because frankly, the Steelers defense has not played at the standard that they want to. Even though last week they got 5 sacks and 5 forced turnovers with a turnover on downs, and they limited the Patriots to just 14 points. They were bad on 3rd and longs. They were allowing the Patriots to convert a lot, even when they run it. They won in the early downs against the run. And I think that's the thing that they're trying to figure out right now, because if you look at how they played the Patriots running backs, they pretty much limited them. They were able to limit those guys. They forced a lot of fumbles, and that was a first because in the Jets and Seahawks games, they were getting gashed by the running backs in those games. But still, they were having plays where guys were just hitting the right seams, the right spots, and Drake May was able to find the right guys. Justin Fields did that a few times in week 1. You saw Sam Darnold hit him a few times in week 2. And that's where, if I'm the Steelers, I'm not looking at Carson Wentz and in my chops. I'm looking at Carson Wentz and saying, we got to be on our P's and Q's, because we cannot let this guy get into a comfort zone where he's able to hit, the soft spot of a cover 2, find the seam in a cover 3, because, he'll be able to find those things. And part of it's been because, again, I think that what the Steelers are doing is with all these new blitzes that they're designing up front, sometimes what's happening is they'll have the right coverage behind it, but one player will do something in that coverage that he used to do on his own all the time that kind of compromises his position. For example, there's times where Jalen Ramsey will want to play trail technique in a situation where he just needs to man a guy up, take away inside leverage, and that'll help the pressure. But when he plays trail technique, if a guy just beats him by a step, traditionally, Jalen Ramsey, sometimes when he plays that trail technique, that's how he gets his interceptions. But if a guy beats him by a step, then all of a sudden that's an easy pass for the quarterback. And now the pressure that the Steelers were setting, that they were basing this entire play on, is basically negated because Jalen Ramsey didn't hold on to that spot. And then there's other times where the Steelers try to disguise a lot. Like last week, if you look at the second touchdown the Patriots scored, they were trying to disguise zone by showing man. And Peyton Wilson forgot that they were supposed to be actually in zone. And so he doesn't drop back into his spot. Hunter Henry, I think it was Hunter Henry, the tight end runs into the end zone. It's a wide open touchdown. Those are the things that Carson Wentz needs to be able to take advantage of. And if the Steelers are on their P's and Q's, he'll have the chance to. But again, this defense has not really been together much of this season. You've been missing half the secondary for pretty much the whole start to the season. They just got back Derek Harmon, who was supposed to be a big part of what they wanted to do up front. And they're still missing Alex Highsmith, who's another big part of what they want to do up front. This is going to be interesting to see how do the Vikings make it easier on Carson Wentz, because if I'm the Vikings, I test the Steelers run defense, because they may have been able to stop running backs last week, but in those first 2 weeks, you saw Kenneth Walker just take over the game for the Seahawks. You saw Breece Hall really get after it with the Jets. I'd be saying, hey, Jordan Mason, you just had a great week 3 against the Bengals. Let's try that again a little bit more and get him going, and then that way things get easier on Carson Wentz.
I think that's really the true key to this game is either team trying to make stuff hard on the other quarterback. If the Steelers can make Carson Wentz really have to like pull up the whole team by his own bootstraps, like if they can make Carson Wentz have to be the driver of success, then I think that's where you start to get some of the meltdown stuff that Carson Wentz did in Indy or Washington or even in his last bit in Philadelphia. If Carson Wentz can just sort of peacefully go through the reads and just sort of dump things off to the running back and live to fight another day, and if you allow Carson Wentz to move the ball playing conservatively, that probably means that things aren't going well for the Steelers, right?
Right.
And like that can have a lot to do with game script too, right? Like if the Vikings fumble on the opening drive, Steelers score, if it's 14-0 because of a turnover right away, and then suddenly that in and of itself can make it feel like Carson Wentz has to suddenly go play hero ball, and that's when he's going to do all his stupid stuff. Right. They managed to avoid that last time. They sprung out to a big lead, and Carson Wentz could just sort of coast, and you get to win 48-10. But like on the flip side too, if the Vikings can make stuff hard on Aaron Rodgers, they can sort of take the teeth out of what he wants to do. If they can make that hard, then you're not going to be able to throw these big, long developing routes, big post routes or whatever. You don't get to throw that kind of. If you can make him dump off to the running back, Brian Flores defenses love that. They love to dump off to the quarterback, to the running back, rally on the check down. That is what Brian Flores wants. So if you can turn Aaron Rodgers into a check down machine, then you can maybe stymie this, and it'll come down to the various run games. So I don't know what you usually do for predictions with these crossover episodes, but what I have on my show is a bold prediction segment every Friday. I do I bring in, like, give me your absolute spiciest, most irresponsible prediction. I'll put it in the thing. If you're right, I'll donate $20 to a Pittsburgh area charity of your choice.
Oh, wow. Now you got pressure on me, because now I'm trying to help out people in need. All right. Let's see. I'll go there. How about this? We'll go. The Steelers secondary gets 2 interceptions in this game.
Bolder.
Oh,
Bolder.
Okay.
Aaron Freeman on the Falcons said J.J. McCarthy would throw 3 picks. He was almost right. You got to go bolder than 2 interceptions.
Bolder than 2 picks? All right.
Yeah.
Scratch that. Okay, let me switch to offense.
Carson Wentz 2 picks, like that. That's an over. I think that might be minus money on FanDuel.
All right. Darnell Washington, 2 touchdown receptions.
That's what I'm talking about.
Third string tight end, baby.
Yes, the Vikings do have a bit of a sordid history with eligible tackles. So they did get iced once by Penei Sewell on a diving catch.
Oh my gosh! Listen,
did you see that game?
I know the game you're talking about. I didn't see it live, but I saw the highlights and I was like, my goodness. But like
3rd and 10, and you just got iced out by Penei Sewell, man. Like, that was disgusting.
But I'm telling you, Darnell Washington, like, this isn't a gimmick. They go back and watch the opening drive touchdown that the Steelers had last week. It's 3rd and some change. And so they just line up. They spread the guys out, and they line up Darnell Washington against the guy. And like, I'm watching, and I'm like, oh, this is going to Darnell Washington, and it's just jump on, and the cornerback just has to like hang on to him, because he can't, if he throws the ball high, he can't jump with this guy. He's 6'7", and he can't like fight through his hands, because he's just Aaron Rodgers putting the ball up too high. So that's why I'll go bold prediction. If the Steelers get in the red zone, they'll try some other things. They'll try some lateral, like fake jet sweep to Jonnu Smith and then pitch to Kenneth Gainwell. They'll try some Pat Freiermuth looks, or some DK Metcalf, because he's also a beast in the red zone. But when push comes to shove, they'll just be like, can we get one-on-one with Darnell? One of those. And as Arthur Smith put it, he said it's like throwing the ball to Shaq in the post. So give me Darnell Washington 2 touchdowns as my bold prediction.
Love it. There's a lot of throw it up to Shaq in the post. I really think that's going to be the key to this is, big DK versus 5'10" corner, or maybe 2 5'10" secondary members who gets the ball.
Be sure you check out Luke over at Locked On Vikings and Chris over at Locked On Steelers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So much great 1 p.m. action on week 4. We got so much to dive into and so much to talk about. We'll dive into a battle of undefeateds to kick off the 1 p.m. slate. The Philadelphia Eagles and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jalen Hurts versus Baker Mayfield. So many storylines in this game. James Jericho of Locked On Bucks and Louis DiBiase of Locked On Eagles have you covered with all the keys you need to know.
Wrapping things up here on a crossover Thursday, and this crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Louis DiBiase, Locked On Eagles. James Jericho, Locked On Bucks. And Louis, taking a look at this game, what do the Eagles have to do to win this one?
Yeah, I think you mentioned a really key matchup with Todd Bowles going up against Kevin Patullo and Jalen Hurts. I think the football has to get out of Hurts' hands quicker than it was last week. And yeah, he a lot of the times has great protection, so he can hold on to the football, try to push it down the field vertically. He also likes to run and extend plays outside of structure, so that's why he holds on to it more. But I think they need to get the ball out quick, have answers for that pressure. And when I say get the ball out quick, I don't just mean a quick little check down to Saquon Barkley. Like, they need to dial things up over the middle of the field, the quick passing game, the short and intermediate areas that they just have really not been living in throwing the football. I think that's going to be key against Tampa Bay because they are going to dial things up. And if you don't have answers to that, if you don't have hot reads and your only antidote is Jalen Hurts just running around trying to make things happen, that's when things can go wrong like it has been the last couple of weeks. That's when mistakes can be made. So I really think that Jalen Hurts and Kevin Patullo having answers for Todd Bowles' different pressure packages is the key to this game, especially in that kind of heat. If Jalen Hurts is getting beat up, it's going to be a long day.
Yeah, a lot of fans are going to remember Donovan McNabb puking on the sidelines wearing those dark green jerseys early in the year in that Tampa Heat. And look, it's pretty much the same thing for the Bucks. I can't believe how dead on you and I are in both of these keys, because it's like these two teams match up so well against each other, and they really are very similar in the way they approach these games. We started to see Josh Grizzard come into his own, but he's not working with a full deck. That's what we have yet to see. He's still not going to get it this week. So I already talked about the run game. So for the offense, it's about letting your pass catchers make their plays. Baker cannot sit in the pocket and wait for things to open up. You have to design plays to get the ball to Ibuka and Bucky and Shep in space and let them run. I would think that with Evans being out, we might start to see more usage out of Tez Johnson, the rookie wide receiver out of Oregon. He just hasn't been utilized this season. I think he has 1 target. So he's a player that would be a huge asset for this particular matchup. These Bucs receivers are beat up. So, when you look at that Eagles secondary, they're not fully healthy either. You have to exploit those matchups that you can and let the guys do the work in the second and the third levels of the defense. You don't need to draw up 40 and 50-yard bombs down the field. This needs to be death by 1,000 paper cuts to wear down this defense and steal a win at home.
Yeah, and I'm looking at that Eagles secondary too. That third cornerback spot has been very susceptible, unlike it was last year when they had Darius Slay, Quinyon Mitchell, and Cooper DeJean. Adoree Jackson has not had a great first 3 weeks of the season. Jacorian Bennett, who they traded for from the Raiders in August, has been pretty brutal as well when he's on the field. I don't know if they'll ever give Keely Ringo the chance I think he deserves, but that third cornerback spot, I know even with Evans out and maybe Godwin plays, maybe he doesn't, if they only have one true, legit target in the passing game, I still wonder when Ibuka is over there on the right-hand side, if it happens, that's still an area Baker Mayfield can pick on, like the Rams did and all the teams have been doing this year. So if there is one weak spot the Eagles have been exploited at, it's that third corner spot. So naturally, I'm always watching that one as well in these matchups.
Yeah, and for the Bucs defensively, they have to stay disciplined. This has been a problem for some of these guys early in the season, and Philly just has too many weapons and a quarterback with legs that can make you pay if you're out of position. Servassier Dennis is one that has given up some huge plays in the first couple of weeks of the season because he didn't stay disciplined. So in a game without Kalijah Kancey, you're probably without Logan Hall. Yeah, he suffered a groin injury against the Jets. Those guys on either side of Vita Vea that have to fill in, they have to make sure that they're not letting Hurts bounce outside and pick up yards with his legs. They have to make sure that they're keeping Barkley in check. Greg Gaines, rookie Elijah Roberts, they both looked good against the Jets, but the Jets are not the Eagles. This is a different monster. So we're going to see if they can keep that going. It's the old Belichick mantra. Do your job. The defense is going to have to win this one for the Bucs, which means getting third down stops and getting one takeaway at the very least. They cannot afford mental mistakes like being out of position or costly penalties that are going to give the Eagles offense a second chance in one drive.
So, James, the Eagles, I think, are 3.5-point favorites on FanDuel, right?
Yep.
I think the Bucs cover that. I think this is going to be a 1 to 3 point game. So I think it's going to be a really close one. And like I said earlier in the show, like this is a massive matchup for both from a seeding perspective in the NFC. It's two of the top 4 teams in the conference. So both got to have it early on in the year, and it's going to be a close one.
Yeah, I do think it's going to be close. Right now, I'm leaning towards the Eagles covering.
Interesting. Okay.
I feel like this is going to be 24-20.
I'll just believe it when I see it in Tampa Bay, man. I know everything blueprint-wise, like on the field, actual contextualized analysis says the Eagles should win this game, but they just are not good in Tampa. So when they end it, I'll say I was wrong. But right now, I'm going to have the Bucs covering.
Yeah, I'll give my official prediction on my Friday show because we haven't seen the injury reports yet. You know, if Tristan plays, if Godwin plays, you know, I can talk myself into saying the Bucs win this game, but right now I'm definitely leaning Eagles, and I'm with you. I think it's close. I think it's less than a touchdown, but I do think they're probably looking at about a 4-point win.
Check out James over at Locked On Bucks and Louie over at Locked On Eagles, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, the Cleveland Browns and Detroit Lions both got big wins in week number 3. Green Bay, they fell to Cleveland. Baltimore, they fell to Detroit. Cleveland and Detroit, they're going to match up. And we have Spencer German of Locked On Browns as well as Matt Derry of Locked On Lions taking you up to game time.
Matt Derry and Spencer German with you. Locked On Lions, Locked On Browns. A little Sunday, 1 o'clock kick at Ford Field. Boy, a lot of Detroit and Cleveland this week, huh, Spencer? This is
no kidding.
Crazy how the schedule maker works sometimes.
Yeah, I mean it's been fun to follow the Tigers and Guardians, just like all the craziness going on with those two teams, with the choke job by Detroit, the win streak for Cleveland. I'm curious to see, like, I was kind of thinking about this honestly earlier, like the idea that maybe the Browns have to be sacrificed on Sunday and the Lions get a win so that the Guardians can win the division or something like that. So we'll see if that happens or not. Yeah. But you know, the sports gods work in mysterious ways, I guess.
They do. It's wild. All right, Spencer, when you look at it, how do the Browns somehow pull this off? What would they need to do to win?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like, I think you saw the blueprint to a T like last week, really. It has to be that the defense finds a way, somehow, some way, to limit the damage from this Lions offense, keep the Browns within striking distance, and then hope that at some point they can sort of turn that corner, turn it on, and make the plays necessary to win the game. It's not the most reliable winning strategy, but it's based off how the Browns are built right now. It's kind of the way they have to do. They have to play these games and hope that they kind of work out, because they just don't have the firepower on offense to hang with a team like the Lions, or clearly hang with most teams in this league, because it's taken them pretty much limiting the damage from all the teams they played to this point to even have a chance to win these games. So, and the one thing you can say is, to this point, the defense has done a pretty good job of setting up the offense to win. Even in that Ravens game, it was a close game. It was within like 2 scores up until like late in the third quarter. So they certainly have the ability to do it, but I just have my doubts about whether or not the offense can actually get it going enough to hang with this Lions team. If they are, as I said earlier, I think it all centers around Quinshon Judkins and that run game getting going and them actually being able to move the football that way, staying ahead of the sticks. I wouldn't mind if the Browns win the toss, taking the ball first instead of deferring, because if you can get on the board and have your defense play with a lead, like, that'd be superb. That'd be really nice for them. So we'll see if Kevin Stefanski chooses to be aggressive if that happens. And I said the same thing last week too with the Packers, and obviously they actually got the ball first, and then they ended up not scoring. But yeah, I think this team just can't make mistakes. Like, they might need a turnover somewhere in the middle of the game to flip momentum in their favor. They need a lot to go their way. They need a lot of luck and a lot of bounces, especially against a team that's as good as the Lions. So the path to victory, I think we saw it to a T last week for this Browns team. I just don't know if it's going to work as effectively against this Lions team.
No, and I think Jared Goff is playing at such a high level right now. And look, you throw week one out, it was bad, and you give Green Bay a lot of credit. But man, the last couple of weeks, Chicago and of course Baltimore Monday night, he has just been on his game. And I think it's a challenge. I think Jared Goff is up for it to go, oh, Browns defense is number one in the league? Really? Okay, watch this. And just do his thing in the play action passing game. If they get the run game going with Montgomery and Gibbs, and like I said, St. Brown matching him up. And look, if they decide, all right, we're just going to put Denzel Ward on St. Brown no matter where he goes, maybe this is the game that Isaac Tesla, who we've been kind of waiting to see more of, gets more touches as kind of that third option. But I don't see a scenario where the Lions lose this game. I just think coming back home, yes, it's a short week. Yes, the Browns defense is very good. But, I kind of look at and see a 31-17 type final where Browns are sitting right at that number, like you said, 17 points. They just don't have enough offensively. I love Jerry Jeudy, but who's getting him the ball? It's just,
Yeah.
And I worry too about, like you said, that O-line, Jones being hurt. I think the Lions will win. What do you think?
Yeah. It's funny. Like last week, I picked the Packers to win in sort of a similar score. I think I said like 27-17 or 27-18 or something like that. And I kind of feel like I feel the same way about this game. Like and it's funny when like you pick a score like that and the fans get to gloat about how you were wrong. They get to rub it in like, haha, you didn't pick it right. So you're so stupid. Like, can't believe you bet against the Browns, because, to the victors go the spoils, I guess. But in retrospect, like, I don't think that any of these predictions, if that's what if that's what I'm rolling with, are like that bad. When you think about the context of the Browns and where where this team is at, especially offensively, and what they can actually do. It's just sometimes football is weird, man. So I think this game is going to have to get really weird for the Browns to have a chance. I sort of laid it out earlier, but they got to stop the run. They got to get pressure on Jared Goff. I think they're just asking for too much. And this Detroit offense is just a juggernaut. You're right. Jared Goff's playing fantastic. I'd probably roll with a similar score. I honestly, I think, what'd you say? 31-17?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I think something in that range is probably where I'm at. Like, I could see them getting to 30 in this game. I think, like the Baltimore game, it could be one of those situations where maybe going into the fourth quarter, it's like 20-10 or 20-13 or something, and the Browns are sort of hanging in there. And then the floodgates just kind of open, because once you get into that fourth quarter, it's like the body blows. They finally figure something out and they score a couple touchdowns or have a couple scoring drives to pull away. But I do think that the Lions win by double digits, sort of running away late in this game. I just think they're as good as the Browns defense has been. I think it's too much of an offensive onslaught to overcome in this one.
Be sure you check out Spencer over at Locked On Browns and Matt over at Locked On Lions, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, the Los Angeles Chargers are making a name for themselves in that AFC West, and they're going to welcome Jackson Dart to the NFL from the New York Giants, as the Giants are going with Dart over Russell Wilson this week. So David Drogemeyer of Locked On Chargers and Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants talk about what Jackson Dart's debut could be and if the Chargers are going to spoil it.
All right, everybody, welcome back to this special crossover edition, Locked On Giants, Locked On Chargers. I'm Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants. He is David Drogemeyer of Locked On Chargers. And you can find us both 5 days a week on YouTube or wherever you get your audio channels. So do check us out if you want to see more of our work. All right, David, it is now time to talk about keys to victory. Let's start with the Chargers. What do they need to do to stay undefeated?
Yeah, 3 things the Chargers must do in this game to be able to win and improve to 4-0. First and foremost, the quick passing game has to be on point. I think one of the things that the Chargers did late in the game against the Broncos was be able to enact that quick passing game, get the ball out of Justin Herbert's hands, not let him get hit, let them kind of move the ball down the field and be able to protect the ball and keep possession of it. Aronde Gadsden II, their rookie 5th-round pick that they traded up for, was a big part of that. And he had a great debut as well, as that was the first game that he was active. And also Amarian Hampton was a big part of it. He had 6 catches for 59 yards as well. And so that was a big part of that. And then the second thing is win the battle of the explosive plays. Per True Media, the Giants are tied for fifth with 13 20-plus yard plays in the 3 games, including 2 plays of 50-plus yards, which is big time. And the Chargers rank 10th with 11 20-plus yard plays. So limiting the explosive plays on defense and getting those explosives on offense are definitely going to be important to how this game is decided. And then, as in every single football game that has ever been played in the history of football, take care of the ball. Win the turnover margin. Not often in football, Patricia, are you going to win if you lose the turnover battle. The Chargers did a good job of that the first couple of weeks, not so much against the Broncos, and it showed because they were in a big chance to lose that football game if Justin Herbert did not show his heroics and was able to bring them back in the game. The team that protects the ball the best is probably going to win this game, and that's what happens more often than not. As far as the Giants and their keys to victory, what do they have to do to be able to pull off the upset and win this game on Sunday?
For starters, they've got to come out of the gate fast. This team, for whatever the reason, doesn't come out of the game fast. I mean, this is a home game for them. Get the crowd into it. Get that 12th man on your side. I mean, that's so important. And the Giants, they come out and they end up shooting themselves in the foot with penalties or miscues. And it looks like, what have they been practicing all week? So that is a huge, huge point of emphasis in East Rutherford, getting off to a fast start. They're still trying to figure it out. And, hopefully they have figured it out. Now, with Jackson Dart in there, he now gives them a whole new dimension because now the Chargers are going to have to account for him as a possible runner. This is a kid who has gotten a sprinkling of snaps in the first 3 games, has primarily handed off the ball or run a read option. So if they can balance out that offense, because look, one of the things the Giants fall into the trap of that drives me crazy because it reminds me of the Odell Beckham Jr. days. You can't force feed the ball all the time to Malik Neighbors. I get it. He wants the ball. He's good with the ball in his hands, but you got other guys that you have to get the ball to. You can't just say, okay, everybody, Malik Neighbors is going to be it, because you know what? You're going to make the defense's job so much easier. So that would be a big thing. The other point, get turnovers. The Giants had this turnover chest that they instituted back in the spring into the summer. The DBs were getting all excited. They'd get an interception. They'd plop the ball into the turnover chest. That sucker is collecting dust right now because the Giants just aren't getting turnovers. And, look, field position battle matters. The special teams unit of the Giants, not too bad with field possession, but could be a little bit better. But if the defense can just come up with a big play, here and there, just to swing the momentum their way, make it easier on the kid running the offense and the offense in general, it could mean the difference of a matter of points or maybe even an upset victory if they can pull that off.
Turnovers changed the absolute temperature of a football game in a very, very quick manner. Also, special teams plays as well. Whenever you get those big returns, those punt returns, those kick returns, they swing the momentum. So whenever you have any opportunity to give a short field to a rookie quarterback to make things easier, it absolutely should be part of the game plan. But not just a rookie quarterback. Any quarterback makes their life a lot easier. So if Justin Herbert gets his defense gives him a turnover, gives him a short field to work with, they are going to be put in the best position to be able to win the game. So turnovers, always so very important. Who protects the ball and who is able to take the ball away is going to probably win this game, as I said. So very, very important, especially when you have a rookie quarterback, though, for the Giants. Any short fields is a huge advantage.
Absolutely. All right, David, before we go, who wins this game?
Yeah, I think for this one here, for the Chargers, the offensive firepower and also just the defensive mastermind that comes from Jesse Minter and how they put a roof on the coverage and how they make things very, very difficult for the better quarterbacks in the league, let alone a rookie. I think this is a really, really tough test for Jackson Dart to have to start up against. They're going to really make him have to process post-snap. I think that's something that's going to be really difficult, and I think they're going to make his life very, very hard in this game. I think the Chargers are going to win this one. It's probably going to be 28-17. I got the Chargers winning by 11.
Okay, 2 scores. I can deal with that. I do think the Chargers are going to win this game. I'm not sure how confident I am the Giants are going to score 17 points because they have struggled now. 14 of their last 20 games, they have failed to get to 20 points. I would like to see them get to that, but that's an awful lot to put on Jackson Dart's shoulder. The kid is ready. I mean, he's confident. He's he feels ready to do it, but he can't do it by himself. And the bottom line is yes, they changed the quarterback, but they didn't change the rest of the offense, which is just as guilty of the struggles. It's not all on Russell Wilson, despite what anybody would like to think. So I don't know. I mean, I would like to think an upset is in the making, but I would feel a lot better if I were talking to Ross Jackson at this point and talking about the Giants possibly beating the Saints. No offense to you, but I think the Giants would have a better chance of beating the Saints if I'm being honest with you.
I think that's totally fair as well. I think going into this game, you just look at these two teams and you see where both of them are going. Obviously, anything can happen in football. That's why they got to strap it up, line it up, and kick it off. And we'll see what happens on Sunday in New York, or in New Jersey, I should say.
Yes, in New Jersey, northern New Jersey.
David has so much great Chargers insight over at Locked On Chargers, and Patricia has so much great Giants insight over at Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up, still so much great 1 p.m. action to get to in week 4. Going to be breaking it all down with the help of our local experts coming up on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. This episode is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home, whether it's the local sports bar packed on game days, the coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or the corner deli that's been serving your community for decades. These are the places that bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. And there's a local spot in Baltimore, in Fed Hill, Be More Licks. And Fed Hill is absolutely electric. It comes alive every Sunday during football season. Everyone's in team colors. The energy is incredible, and it feels like the entire block is there cheering together. And those local spots are what makes the neighborhood feel like home, and so many of them run on Square. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnNFL to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See ya in the neighborhood. Moving along on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show, Kevin Ostreicher still rocking out with you here, diving into all the Week 4 action with the help of our local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's get back into the 1 p.m. slate of games. The New Orleans Saints, they're trying to figure things out, and a tough team to figure them out against is the Buffalo Bills, who are undefeated and on a roll. So those two teams mashing up in Week 4. Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints, Joe Marino of Locked On Bills. They'll tell you all about the keys you need to know leading up to game time.
Joe Marino from Locked On Bills, joined by Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints. We're now going to focus our conversation on what each team needs to do to win this football game. I have 3 things down. I'm sure Ross does as well. Your key, your top key for Saints to get this dub.
Yeah, I would say that the dub is very different for New Orleans, right? The dub
you seemed uncomfortable there, Ross.
Yeah. The dub isn't necessarily getting a win, although that would send shockwaves through New Orleans in a way that like everybody here would love. Do not get me wrong. So we know any given Sunday is definitely a thing. But for me, the idea of winning is to show that you can be competitive against one of the NFL's best teams, regardless of what the result of the game is. And so for me, I think the first thing is not beat yourself. And that's something that the New Orleans Saints have done quite a bit. They've been penalized a ton. They've been penalized on third downs where they would otherwise be getting off the field, which is always frustrating. They have had these special teams issues. They've had other issues that have kind of been them shooting themselves in the foot. So the first thing they got to do, Joe, is play the opponent, not play the opponent and themselves. I think that's the first thing they've got to get figured out, is cleaning up some of those disciplinary issues, procedural issues, pre-snap penalties when they're trying to do tempo and motion and keep their offense, kind of the easy buttons going. And then, some foolish penalties as well, like some unnecessary roughness things and stuff like that. Like the extracurriculars need to be cut out. You're not a good enough team for that kind of stuff. And so that's got to be the first thing that this team has to do, is not create an additional opponent for themselves on Sunday.
One of the hard truths in the NFL is accepting that games are lost more than they are won. So don't beat yourself. And I think once teams kind of figure that out, that's when you can kind of find your stride and mature as a football team. And it takes time, right? This is game 4 under Kellen Moore. So obviously some growing pains there. For me with the Bills, it really just comes down to, number one, playing sound situational defense, third downs and red zone. We talked about it in segment 1. The Dolphins got into 15 third downs. The Bills allowed them to convert 10 of them. You got to get off the field on third downs. And then you got to be able to stop teams in the red zone. So far, the Bills have allowed 5 touchdowns and 7 trips to the red zone. And it's 71%. That's 27th in the NFL. The Bills are going to be a serious Super Bowl contender. They got to be able to play better third down defense, and they have to be able to stop teams in the red zone, which is structurally how their defense is set up. Like, they're going to play a lot of too high coverage shells. They're going to give you some light boxes. They're going to invite you to say, hey, if you can string 10, 11, 12 plays together and them all be positive, you're going to have a good chance to score, but we're going to tighten the screws in the red zone. We're going to introduce some variance. The Bills are very good at taking away the football. Sean McDermott, this is crazy, 12 years in a row, top 10 and percentage of defensive drives that end and a takeaway. That's not normally sustainable, Ross.
No.
You know, Ball. It's 12 years in a row. With Sean McDermott, it is. We assume that it's going to happen. So the problem with that formula is you got to stop teams in the red zone, and you got to stop them on third down. And right now, it's been a problem that's lingering into another season.
Yeah, that's an incredible stat, like shockingly so. Wow. I think the next thing for New Orleans is that they've got to be prepared for this game. It's going to be on full display very quickly if they come in as underprepared as they came in up against the Seattle Seahawks. This team has not gotten an interception yet this season. This team has not scored on its first possession yet this season. This team was scoreless through the first quarter as well. And so the Saints have to get this stuff figured out to where they're impacting the football on the defensive side by knowing what it is that they need to do to match up with an opposing offense. They need to get their offense rolling and take advantage of the incredible speed and explosion that they do have at the wide receiver position, which only one receiver so far for the Saints, and let me say pass catcher for the Saints so far, averages more than 10 yards per catch so far this season. And it's tight end Jack Stoll, who had a 13-yard catch last week and had one other 10-plus yard catch in another week. That's it. And so the Saints have got to start taking advantage of the talent that they have downfield. And in order to do that, you got to come in prepared and know how to be able to take advantage of this. You can't come in every week and say after the game, well, the defenses took this away when you played 3 different defenses who have attacked you 3 different ways and have played 3 different types of coverages against you and taken your big play position, taking your big play potential away. At some point, the common denominator is actually the issue. And so I'd like to see the Saints get a little bit better there.
Every zone coverage eventually becomes man coverage. And I promise you, the Bills don't have a single player that can run with Chris Olave. So he went up to that guy. right. Or I saw his yards per catch is like 9 or something like that. I didn't know if he was coming back off injury and he didn't have the juice back, but
nope, just despicable. It's just despicable in terms of the usage.
I've been texting you about him for years. I'm like,
yep.
When's he freed up? When can he get the ball? Number 2 for me is zero panic. You just can't have zero panic in this game. It's game 4 of the Kellen Moore era. It's a quarterback. I know this is a Ross Jackson stat that has never won a start, right? He's 0-9 and Spencer Rattler. This is year 9 of Sean McDermott. It's year 8 of Josh Allen. He's the NFL MVP. And, look, you just don't need to have any panic. I go back to the Broncos playoff win that the Bills had last year in the wild card round. Broncos got the ball first, and they hit a bomb to Troy Franklin. It was a touchdown, and you're thinking to yourself, oh, geez. Like, is this going to happen right now? And then you play the rest of the game. The Bills win 31-7. They score 31 unanswered points in the playoffs. Like, your maturity as a football operation has to shine in this type of game where you are just simply a deeper, more talented roster that's at home. Play your game. Don't panic. Maybe they make a play. Maybe Chris Olave catches a bomb. Maybe there's a reverse to Rashid Shaheed. Maybe there's a special teams thing that goes the Saints' way. Just keep playing and dare the Saints to outscore you for 60 minutes, and I don't think they can.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good one. I mean, you have to maintain your composure no matter what it is that goes down. The Saints is a young team. We're learning that. Obviously, a veteran team needs to be able to do that as well. I think my last one here is that the Saints need to get Chase Young back out on the football field, and he needs to have an impact. He can't be a player that comes back and then doesn't, make some kind of a difference. Last year, according to our friends over at True Media, the Saints pressure percentage ticked up 7%. The Saints sack percentage ticked up 2% with Chase Young on the field versus when he was off the field. Those aren't massive moves, but they would be massive for where the Saints are right now as one of the worst teams in the NFL in generating pressure. They're second to last in the league. And so with a 7% boost, they'd at least be ahead of like the Cincinnati Bengals in the 31.5% range. And that would put them around 24-ish. And so I think that this would be a great game for the Saints to get Chase Young back and for him to show some kind of impact. The Saints had 39 sacks last season. 31 of them happened with Chase Young on the field. It's not just about what he produces. It's about the attention that he could potentially draw and allow some other guys to produce. Last week, he wasn't on the field. The Seattle Seahawks clued in and really focused in on Carl Granderson, who's the other top edge rusher, along with Cam Jordan. They focused on taking Carl Granderson out of the game. No sacks for the Saints team for the first time this season after starting off with 8 second in the NFL through the first 2 weeks. So I think Chase Young coming back would be huge, but Chase Young coming back and having some kind of impact would bring them a little bit closer to being that competitive team.
And obviously a pretty big commitment to Chase Young with the contract extension. And we know that every dollar with the Saints and the cap situation, what it's been, matters a ton. And so there needs to be return on that investment. Last one for me, Ross, is to expect the unexpected. This is a team that got smoked last week that has a young coach that's looking to prove himself as a leader. And I expect him to work hard to galvanize this team and to put some things into this game plan that helps them steal possessions, right? There could be some trick plays. There could be some special teams fakes. The Bills have to play a smart football game against a team that I think is going to come out trying to swing. We know that your team like the Bills, every game that you play is a measuring stick for that opponent, especially a young team like this. So I think there's going to be a lot of potential for some of those opportunities that the Saints will look to steal a possession, and the Bills need to be ready and disciplined for those types of moments.
Be sure you check out Ross over at Locked On Saints and Joe over at Locked On Bills, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. AFC South clash between two underperforming teams, the Houston Texans and the Tennessee Titans. CJ Stroud versus Cam Ward. John Hickman of Locked On Texans and Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans talk about which young quarterback will come out on top.
All right, John, let's cap off today's crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Titans, Locked On Texans. We talked about what the heck is going on with these teams in the first two segments. At the end of the day, that's really the big question here, whether it's the play on the field, the moves they're making off the field. None of it makes sense at this point in time, but on the field, let's get back to on the field.
Let's do it.
The matchup that will decide this one, for me, it's the Texans defensive line against the Titans offensive line. The Titans offensive line has been a massive disappointment so far this year. They've given up 15. Now, I will tell you, if I'm honest, John, I dive into the tape. I would say only maybe 8 of those sacks are actually on the offensive line. I would say 3 or 4 of them are probably Cam Ward. A couple other ones are running backs or tight ends blowing it in pass protection.
That's the Houston Texans.
Dude, it's a mirror. We're talking in a mirror like the Lil Wayne song. I'm looking at a mirror. You know what I mean? Like, that's where we're at right now. But at the end of the day, the Titans offensive line, even if J.C. Latham is back, even if Kevin Zeitler is back, even if they're at full strength on the offensive line, the Texans defensive line is nothing to play with. One of the best defensive fronts in the entire NFL. So even if the Titans offensive line was playing well and was healthy, I would still look at this matchup as something that can wreck the game, because Will Anderson might be, he's leading the NFL in pressure rate right now. He might be a top 3 edge rusher with Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett, and Will Anderson at this point. And Danielle Hunter might be top 5, top 10. So that's the matchup I'm watching for. If the Titans get whooped up front by the Texans' defensive line, the Texans are going to run away with this game no matter what happens on the other side of the ball.
I think for Houston, if I'm looking at a matchup that will take them out and force them to lose a game, it's just what they've been showing us. They're going to shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
Again.
Them versus themselves.
11 penalties, 7 penalties, 6 penalties. The amount of those penalties, and that totals out to 24, that resulted in a third down conversion for the other team or second and long, third and long. And now that forces why they're in these long third down situations, which is why they can't convert on third down. Again, 8 of 33. That's what hurt Houston. It's always themselves through 3 games. And I think that when you have a team like Tennessee that it's really they have nothing to lose, what's the real expectation there for Tennessee? I remember you mentioned maybe 5 or 6 wins.
5 wins was my prediction, and I think they're going to struggle to get there.
Yeah, so when you got a team like that, that's a little dangerous. Now, for Houston on the flip side, what I think is going to play in their favor, what should play in their favor, is since game 1, the rookie running back, Woody Marks, has gotten more opportunities, and he's a guy that explosive. I really like. He's explosive. He can impact the team in the passing game just as much in the run game. Outside of his first game, the last couple of games, he's running that 4 and some change per pop, right? When I look at what's been the weakness for the Tennessee Titans, along with Nick Chubb getting busy, they haven't been able to stop the run. And so I think for the Houston Texans, this is a team that I think needs to help their quarterback out a lot. He's been hit a lot, and they abandoned the run plenty of times throughout, especially in the second half. So just not turning the ball over, but turning around and handing the ball off to their running back, I think is going to play in a major way for Houston.
Well, that's also going to help them play clean football. And that's why I put that as kind of our third segment title here is I think the team that plays clean will win. You mentioned the penalties for the Texans. Texans fans, you want to hear something? John says, 11, 7, 6. Here's the Titans penalties in the first 3 games. 13, 10, 8. Everybody's celebrating because the Titans only had 8 penalties in week 3 and they got beat by 21 points. You know what I mean? So the last 2 games for the Texans, it's been bad, but the Titans' best game is worse than that. So whichever team doesn't turn over the ball, doesn't shoot themselves in the foot with penalties, setting themselves up in third and long situations, that's the team that'll probably end up winning this one. But at the end of the day, I think the Texans can even afford a couple extra mistakes because they are a better team on paper than the Titans. And that defensive line, like Cam, I worry for Cam Ward's safety in this one. He's in danger.
I think, because you say that the Texans can afford a mistake, man, Tyler, they don't even get down to the red zone enough to go 0-4 in the red zone.
Yeah.
Like this offense is god awful. And that's why I think it's so bad. I'm not confident in picking Houston to beat the Tennessee Titans.
I understand that. I'm not confident to pick the Titans to beat anyone. So I know exactly how you feel.
This game is going to end 0-0.
No, but it's going to be -3 to -3 is what it really should be. You know what I mean?
This is going to be tough, and I don't even want to give a score prediction. I'm going to say, because of the frustration with this organization, man, I do think that this will be a game that can swing either way. I'm going to be realistic here, and I'm going to pick Houston, but it's something like 13-10.
I 100% agree with you. I would take the under on this game. I don't know what the FanDuel line is right now, the over-under, but I would take the under on this game. I think both teams are going to struggle. They're both going to look out of sorts, but I think ultimately, like I'm saying, that defensive front, the one good thing in this game is the Texans' defensive line. That's the only unit that you can look at for sure and be like, all right, we know that they're really good. So with that, I'm going to give the advantage to the Texans. I don't know what the score is going to be, but again, I think we're going under, and I would imagine the Texans are going to end up finding a way to win this one at home.
You can check out Tyler over at Locked On Titans and John over at Locked On Texans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, the Washington Commanders and Atlanta Falcons both looking to pick up a big NFC win in Week number 4. So David Harrison of Locked On Commanders and Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons talk about how each team can come out on top over the other and make a statement.
Wrapping up today's Crossover Thursday presented by PrizePicks here on Locked On Falcons and Locked On Commanders. Of course, I'm your host, Aaron Freeman, Locked On Falcons, David Harrison of Locked On Commanders. And David, when we look ahead to this matchup, again, the Falcons are the underdogs, 1.5 point underdogs to this Commanders team. You're feeling good about that line in terms of Washington's ability to cover, that FanDuel line before we get into these keys to victory?
Yeah, I mean, look, every game is different. Every week is an opportunity for, the unexpected to happen, for people to step up when maybe they haven't before, and all those things. But I think, given just kind of what has been happening with the Falcons this season, what's been happening with the Commanders this season, I think, momentum is a real thing in football, and I think the Commanders have a lot of it, and the Falcons just don't have a lot of it. So yeah, I think Commanders. Personally, I'd probably be willing to take the Commanders like +7 or by 7.5, like over 1 score. But history tells us that this is probably going to be a close game, because even though, you mentioned the Commanders have beaten the Falcons 4 years in a row, it's never been by more than 1 score. So, these two teams are not rivals, even though they play every year. But they certainly play each other tough when they get together.
Yeah. So talking about, what the Falcons need to do in order to win a potential 1-score game, again, I think we already mentioned one of them. It is get off to a fast start. Obviously, as you said, David, that kind of dictates the terms. You get the opposing team to play on your terms as opposed to you having to play on their terms. The other thing is, kind of big picture stuff for the Atlanta Falcons, right? The alarm is sounding, right? Don't roll over and just ignore and snooze that alarm. You're getting a wake-up call after last week's game against Carolina. Turn the negative into a positive. You got a blowout loss. It's a wake-up call for your season that, you need to play with a sense of urgency. You need to approach every game like it's a playoff game. And Carolina was the easiest potential game for the Falcons in their first 6 games, the most winnable game, and they got absolutely wrecked in that game. And so now this team in week 4 needs to start playing with the urgency. So that to me is another one. And then special teams matters. You saw last week with Washington against the Raiders, some big kicks from Matt Gay, some big returns in the return game. The Falcons special team has been up and down. It was bad week 1, good week 2, bad week 3. So I guess it's due for a good game in week 4, but they're going to need that if they're going to win a close game. What about you when you look at the flip side for the Commanders? What do they need to do in order to win?
Yeah, I think the Washington Commanders need to establish the run early, right? We kind of already talked about that or whatever. Use that, that squad of running backs that they have. And I didn't even mention Deebo Samuel, who is kind of a, de facto running back when they need him to be. We saw a direct snap to him against the Raiders that really took all of us by surprise. Like, they're literally another reporter sitting next to me as the play's going on. He goes, "Wait a second, what just happened?" I said, they snapped the ball directly to Deebo. Not something we'd ever seen during training camp or during the preseason. So obviously they've been working on that behind closed curtains. So, that's number one. That gives you control of the clock. It gives you control of the pace of the game. I think the biggest tool that a young quarterback can have is patience and poise. Draining the clock makes a young quarterback impatient and makes them lose some of that poise. And speaking of that, also getting hit helps a young quarterback lose a little bit of that pressure. Michael Penix Jr., the way you did Geno Smith, 5 sacks in week 3 for the Commanders defense. I know Michael Penix was a little bit rattled under pressure against Carolina Panthers. You need to find a way to do the same thing that defense did. I know, look, this defense has got some dogs on it. Javon Kinlaw is not out there trying to make friends. He's out there trying to hurt people's feelings, and he's looking forward to this matchup. Daron Payne. I mean, last week we saw Daron Payne playing everything from the 0 to the 5. He's not going to play wide 9, right? But 0 to 5, any technique in between, Daron Payne is going to be there, and he's going to be a guy who's looking to make an impact on this team. So as Bijan Robinson tries to run, off the left edge, off the right edge, they're going to have the guys out there to try to bottle him in and then get to Michael Penix Jr. There's a play last week, Aaron, where Geno Smith was under pressure, darn near threw the ball to where only a Washington Commanders lineman was standing. He had dropped off in coverage on a cross dog look, and I thought he was going to do it. In real time, I was like, he's about to do this. He didn't do it. I feel like that's a situation where a young quarterback probably does it. And that's what the Washington Commanders are going to look to force. And then the third phase, Washington Commanders punt returner rookie Jalen Lane out of Virginia Tech has been absolutely explosive. Had a 90-yard punt return touchdown against the Raiders, but believe me, that is not the only good return this kid has had. He looks like a very legit punt returner. So the Washington Commanders are going to look to force the Falcons to punt from their own end, from the minus end of the field, to hopefully get a long punt, give Jalen Lane a little bit of runway to get going, find a seam, and hit it. The Atlanta Falcons obviously need to probably try to not allow that to happen. And they've been one of the better punt coverage teams in the NFL, maybe quietly so because of everything else going on. So I think that's going to be a really important battle. If the Falcons punt coverage team and punter can prevent Jalen Lane from having an impact in this game, I think it's going to help the Falcons. But if Jalen Lane can, of course, if he breaks the touchdown return, obviously that's huge. But even if it's not a touchdown, if he can get 14 yards here, 15 yards there, maybe a 20-yarder here or there, and just impact that field position game, and that's going to be huge. And, of course, Deebo Samuel, talk about the multi-tool type of receiver that he is. 69-yard kickoff return to start the game against the Raiders. He's always dangerous when he touches the ball. So special teams, at least especially in the return game, is going to be incredibly important. I'm hoping, even if it's for both teams, that these kickers going back inside can get their act together, because neither of them – I mean, Matt Gay has had a better day, playing outside in Northwest than Romo did, but, like, hopefully going inside helps both these kickers, and then it comes down to the return teams.
Yeah, up and down kicking performance for both of these teams. And of course, because these games tend to be so close, it's going to boil down to a field goal, like it did last time, where Riley Patterson had a chance to, win it for the Falcons, and he didn't win it for the Falcons. And it's going to be a Matt Gay field goal or a John Parker Romo or possibly Ben Sauls. Who knows? We don't even know who the Falcons kicker is going to be this week. So we'll see. So that's sort of why it's going to matter that whoever is holding that spot down, they do their job, and we'll see if the rest of both of these teams do their job.
Be sure to check out Aaron over at Locked On Falcons and David over at Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Last of the 1 p.m. slated games, the Carolina Panthers and the New England Patriots, two teams that are also sporting young quarterbacks in Bryce Young and Drake May. So Julian Council of Locked On Panthers and Nick Cattles of Locked On Patriots talk about keys to victory, key storylines, and so much more.
Look, for those people watching this episode on YouTube, I just want to personally apologize for my collar during those reads. I don't know what happened. It forced me to change my shirt. It was a disaster. I understand the mess. I'm going to fix the mess. But yeah, I know. And if you didn't pay attention because you skipped through the ads, if you want to laugh at me, just go back and watch 5 seconds of it. It is a disaster. Julian Council, Nick Cattles with you here. Locked On Patriots, Locked On Panthers crossover episode. We're not going to give you the predictions, okay? We don't do the predictions in the final segment here. We're going to wait until the last episode of the week to give you our official prediction for this game. But, Julian, we are going to give the 3 keys to all the people listening and watching. So let's start with your first key.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's take care of the football, because you look at New England, you look at Carolina so far. New England has a -3 turnover differential, 26th in the league, at least tied for 26th in the league, while Carolina is at a -1. So far this season, the only game the Panthers have won was when they won the turnover margin, and that was on Sunday, where they got 3 turnovers or 3 takeaways against Atlanta, had that 1 muff punt, but they're 0-2 in the other games where they spotted their opponents 10 points, 10 to Jacksonville, 10 to Arizona. So that is the top key for me. Take care of the football, which you could bring up as a key every single week. But looking at these 2 teams in particular, when New England, the one game they didn't turn the ball over, they won on the road against Miami. So both these teams have shot themselves in the foot at different times so far this season to start out. And if Carolina can take care of the ball, they're going to be well on their way to having a chance to win this game on the road.
All right, I'll take that point from you, and I will double down with the Patriots, because that was actually my first key, is take care of the ball after you turned it over 5 times last week against Pittsburgh. But I will say this, the overall operation, clean things up. I thought, Julian, when the Patriots hired Mike Vrabel, I said this during the hiring. I said it before the hiring. I wanted Mike Vrabel to be the hire before they promoted Gerard Mayo. I, of course, did not know that was an inside deal, and it was already decided that Gerard Mayo was going to be the guy. But I thought this was going to be a serious football program with Mike Vrabel. And what I mean by that is disciplined, detailed, make sure you take care of the football. And frankly, through the first 3 weeks, that's been underwhelming. Slow starts for this team, especially in the first quarter. A lot of penalty flags, a lot of turnovers. The discipline is just not there. Slim margin for error with this team. So no gifts to the Panthers on Sunday. Please, just stop shooting yourself in the foot. What's your second key?
Yeah, second key for me is find a way to run the ball. They really haven't done it to that well of a clip, not that high of a clip so far this season, as far as like they didn't really run it a ton week 1 or in week 2 when they were behind. And when you have a guy like Chuba Hubbard, who was excellent last year, he's 5th in success rate among running backs who had at least 200 plus carries. And then you have Rico Dowdle, who was 6th in success rate among running backs who also had 200 plus carries. You would think you'd want to run those guys a little bit more, and they're both coming off 1,000-yard rushing season. So there's a lot of people who were hoping that maybe this could be a smash and dash, double trouble part 2, like you used to have with D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart back in the day. And that has not necessarily happened so far. So this week, especially if you're going to be down your top pass catchers, got to find a way to run the ball, control the clock on the road there in New England.
I want to talk about the big guys up front for my second key. I'm talking interior defensive line versus interior offensive line. Everybody's going to talk about Milton Williams. And by the way, he was great the first 2 weeks. He was not as good last week. That could be a little bit of the Steelers just getting rid of the football quickly and what they did offensively. But Williams was really good the first 2 weeks. Christian Barmore has been up and down, kind of expected after last year in the blood clots. But the name I want to put all the Panthers fans on is Kyrie's Tonga. Kyrie's Tonga is, I will tell you, a revelation for this defense. He was the best defensive player for this team last week. I think he's going to get more snaps. He's been good against the run. He has been really good against the pass. And I look at Cade Mays. I look at Chandler Zavala, backup center, backup right guard for the Patriots fans that might not know who those two guys are. And I think if the Patriots can take advantage of that between Williams, Barmore, and Tonga, that's going to make life miserable for Bryce Young and the running backs. The Patriots need to win that matchup on Sunday between the interiors. They need their interior defensive linemen to play really well. What's your final key?
Yeah, final key is going to be win on special teams. I know we always focus on what you do offensively, defensively, but Carolina had a decided advantage on special teams on Sunday in that one against Atlanta. Ryan Fitzgerald, their rookie kicker from Florida State, has been perfect so far on the season, had a 57-yarder on Sunday in that win. And also his kickoffs, he's been doing some sort of knuckleball kickoff, which Atlanta could not field multiple times on Sunday. And that could be a decided advantage, especially in this new dynamic kickoff that they have in the NFL, where sure, there's more returns, but where are guys going other than to a wall 10 yards in front of them? Nowhere. So yeah, I guess it's having the intended effect, but really not doing anything to change the game. But maybe for Carolina, like they did last week where Atlanta couldn't pick up the ball, that puts New England, like the Falcons, back on their 15 or their 10-yard line, and that could help you out as far as having that offense pinned back, and your defense could be aggressive and force a mistake like they did last week, that pick 6 with Michael Penix really just throwing a bad ball in that situation. So yeah, winning on special teams, that would be my final key for Carolina.
It's a great point by you. I mean, Andy Borregales settled down a little bit the last couple of weeks, but he's been shaky, missed a couple of extra points, missed a field goal. And the Patriots got a couple of good returns the first couple of weeks, including a touchdown kickoff return by Antonio Gibson. But last weekend against Pittsburgh, they really struggled. Their return units were not good at all. They got like nothing. They were starting at the 20, 21-yard line all day long. And Mike Vrabel said with the media on Wednesday, he told the media that he sat on Tuesday night and watched the Panthers kickoff coverage and kickoffs for 2 straight hours. He sat there and spent 2 hours watching special teams. So he apparently agrees with you, Julian Council, that it's a big deal this weekend. I would say, you mentioned the run game for Carolina. I think it's the same thing with the Patriots. Can the running backs take advantage of some of that Carolina run defense? They are 25th in EPA per rush, 30th in yards per play. Run away from Derek Brown. Do not run towards Derek Brown. And Drake May scrambles, all those extra yards, those conversions, they stack up. And he's been fantastic for the most part, aside from the fumble last week. There's that but again. He's been really good running the football, scrambling for 10, 15, 18 yards. So run game, I would say run game.
Julian's got you covered on Locked On Panthers, and Nick's got you covered on Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That'll do it for the 1 p.m. slate of games, but not for us on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. We have a lot of content to dive into. The 4 p.m. slate of games, there are a couple of very juicy matchups there. Stay tuned. Got a lot coming your way on the show. First, this show is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Ravens, Rashad Bateman delivered in a big way. I know it was a tough game for the Ravens in week 3 against the Lions, but Rashad Bateman came up clutch with reception after reception. And when the pressure was on, he was coming through with clutch catches and no hesitation on those, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, this performance was not a fluke. Rashad Bateman has been on a streak throughout his career here. And just like Rashad Bateman's delivered for the Ravens, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. Lots of NFL action in week 4 of the 2025 NFL season. Welcome back into the Ultimate NFL pregame show. Kevin Oestreicher still taking you through all of week 4's action. We talked about the 1 p.m. slate of games in that early window. Let's get to the later window, 4 o'clock, 4:25, and we are going to start with what, in my opinion, is the matchup of the week, and that is the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs. No bias. Lamar versus Mahomes is always peak television, so you want to tune in for that one. And Ryan Tracy and Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs, as well as myself, Kevin Oestreicher of Locked On Ravens, we break down everything you need to know heading into game time.
Cannot wait. Chiefs Ravens is always a good game, and this is going to be no different. Keys to victory. Ryan, I'm going to start with you. Where are you seeing this going as it is right now?
With all these things that we've been talking about, I think in the end, as teams try to simplify for both their sakes, I do think it comes down to foundational football. And for me, that means something that the Chiefs have been fairly successful at, but not always as consistently as you'd like. You got to stop Derrick Henry, because this team, the Chiefs defense, is generally okay letting you run. You let Derrick do that, it's gonna hurt. It's as good as a deep ball. So they got to shift their mentality. They have been successful, especially going back to even Frank Clark, where they've been able to shift that mentality to really try to attack him in particular, to try to slow down what I think is the catalyst of the offense. That's not the only thing. Obviously, we just talked about Lamar. They are kind of a two-headed monster, but I do think in this particular case, I got to put that emphasis on, especially early downs. First couple of 15 is go stop Derrick.
It's a good one. And Derrick is coming into this game extremely mad and extremely ready to prove someone wrong here, because he has 3 fumbles over the course of the first 3 games for the Ravens, 2 in very high leverage situations that ultimately were a key part in costing the Ravens those matchups. I saw someone on social media say the first Chiefs defender that comes in contact with Derrick Henry is going to be like vaporized into atoms, because he's going to get hit so hard, because Derrick's looking for that guy. And he's still mad about it. Even on Wednesday, he talked about it. So, and I always say this, like, especially with this Ravens offense, like it's 100% correct. Like Derrick Henry, if you get him going, and he's a guy that, like, as he picks up speed down the field, he is harder. It's like a bowling ball. It's harder and harder to stop him. But if you let that Ravens ground game go wild, the Ravens can work play action off of that so effectively, because as a result, you have to either send in heavier personnel or those linebackers start to creep up more towards the line of scrimmage, and you see that fake, you take a step, and then you have maybe a Mark Andrews running behind you for a big play. So it's a huge key for the Chiefs for sure. I think for the Ravens, conversions are going to be really big in this game, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, where the Ravens haven't been great at stopping third down this season. They're 24th in the league, haven't been great in the red zone so far either. They're giving up 50% of their fourth down conversions, plus 54.5% of their red zone conversions, which their red zone conversion rate is 28th in the league right now. And you look at the opposite for Kansas City here, third down defense for Kansas City is great. They're 9th in the league on third down. On fourth down, they're 6th. In red zone, they're 15th. So I think, to me, for the Ravens, stopping the Chiefs on third down, because, again, for a great offense or an offense that has a lot of potential, I say this for a lot of these great teams, how do you stop that offense is you don't let them get the ball in their hands. You keep them on the sideline. So you don't give Mahomes the ball, and Mahomes can't do anything without the ball. So I think that's going to be big, of stopping the Chiefs on those big third down conversions, turning the ball back over to the Ravens. That's going to be a big way I think Baltimore can win this game.
when I look at this game, it comes down to, can Kansas City continue to do what they have started to do this season, and that's throw the ball down the field. I'm not saying they have to chuck it down the field 8 or 9 times in the game, but they need to continue to push the ball down the field because it changes their offense and it gives them the ability to threaten the defense and make the defense back up, which I think is going to be very important because the Chiefs need to be able to run the ball as well. So to me, it's a multiple thing. Like if you are able to throw the ball and you're able to threaten and you take a shot to Tyquan Thornton, even if you don't connect, it makes the Ravens think about it. And if that pulls the safeties back even just a little, or the linebackers are hesitating because of the deep pass with Thornton and Brown and Worthy in the game, that is going to help the running game. And Kansas City needs to be able to keep Lamar Jackson off the field and really keep their defense off the field as well. Because the thing that always worries me about a guy like Derrick Henry is you may stop him early in the game, but if he gets the ball 25 times, you're not going to be wanting to stop him in the fourth quarter. I'm thankful that this is a September game and not a cold winter game, because it'd be even worse in November, December. But that's the big thing for me, is looking at this game. Can you continue to push the ball down the field so you can maybe run the ball a little bit better and keep the ball away from the Ravens offense? I'm really looking forward to this game. Anything else you want to throw out there, Kevin?
No, I mean, I just think that for both these teams, honestly, it could come down to the turnover department as well. Like, I think that the turnovers, the Ravens haven't been able to really force a lot of those in big spots this year. I mean, the last turnover the Ravens forced that was not against the Cleveland Browns, and they played the Browns twice, was Christmas Day against Houston. So it's coming up on 9 months since that has happened, right around. You got to be able to force turnovers. Those are the ultimate shifts in games, those big momentum plays. So in my opinion, if the Ravens can force a couple of those, I expect it to be a close game. Those could be the difference in the game, as well as the special teams as well. The Ravens working with Tyler Loop at kicker now. There is no more Justin Tucker. Loop's been great as a field goal kicker, but the new kickoff rules, he's been kicking the ball out of bounds a lot. He's been putting the ball in the right before the zone you're supposed to kick it in. So that has given the opponents the ball at the 40-yard line. You can't give your opponent short field here. That's another big one I'm looking at too. Chris and Ryan are available for you all the time on Locked On Chiefs, and I'm available for you all the time on Locked On Ravens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Colts and the Rams are our next matchup, and man, you got the Colts being the NFL's feel-good story right now with Daniel Jones on a heater, and the Rams, valiant effort against the Eagles. Of course, it was not enough. So Doug McCain of Locked On Rams and Jake Arthur of Locked On Colts talk about which team will come out victorious.
And welcome back to this crossover edition of Locked On Rams and Locked On Colts. Okay, so you're going to be at the game, right? I believe.
No, I'm not traveling to LA this one.
Hey, so look, there's nothing better than, hey, I got my cooler from Wayfair, right? I mean, it's nothing better than being on the couch, red zoning it, or actually, I think red zone's a little for amateurs, right? You got to get the YouTube NFL Sunday ticket, all the games on the quad screens. But yeah, I mean, what do you think this game? Does it feel like the Colts are playing with house money in this one? Because it feels like the Rams, if they lose this game, you got Baltimore and San Francisco, you're going to London, and all of a sudden you're in a position where are you going to have to try to climb out of the holes that they've had to climb out of for the past 2 seasons? 3-1 sounds a lot better than 2-2. And for the Colts, I mean, at 4-0, you come to LA, beat this Rams team that kind of has been a little bit of a sexy pick to win the division, be a Super Bowl contender. What do you think this game would mean to the Colts?
Yeah, I do think this is a toss-up. I easily see an avenue for either team to win. But right now, I think the Colts are totally bought in. It's taken Shane Steichen a few years to really deliver the message and get the return on it with the right players and coaches around him. And it seems like it's finally sunken in. And some of the areas they're strongest at are hallmarks of good teams, especially offensive line play, quarterback play. I do have concerns about the pass rush and, the run defense. We'll see. I know those are areas that the Rams might be able to exploit. Especially the power run game. Like teams that want to commit to the run, I think will be able to have success against the Colts. It just hasn't really been the recipe in these first few weeks for their opponents. 2 of them were blowouts, and those teams weren't able to establish the run against the Colts at all. But I'm very curious about this one. I think it's going to be very, very close. I do like the Colts' advantages in the passing game. Again, I think Tyler Warren's going to be a pretty big X factor. I got to imagine the Rams are going to try and sell out to stop Jonathan Taylor, in which we've seen, obviously, the Colts have had a lot of success through the air. Jones is completing 70%, over a 9.0 yards per attempt, 100 passer rating each week. So, like, he's balling. Defensively, I'm very curious, again, how I mentioned the cornerbacks are going to match up with these receivers, because these receivers can give it to anybody, really. But does Lou Anarumo rely more on attempting to muddy the waters for Stafford and kind of throw off his timing a little bit? Because that's what he did to Tua, because Tua is obviously a very timing, precision-based passer who throws to spots, and everything. They were just able to muddy the waters so much for him and confuse him a bit. I don't think they'll necessarily confuse Stafford, but they'll probably attempt to delay him a little bit and make him think about things a little harder, which, when you've got a guy that gets rid of the ball as quickly as he does, I think that's really the only way to counter that and get a pass rush. And they know that. So I've picked the Colts so far in each game to win. So I think I'm going to keep it up here. I think they're going to win a close one. Again, it could just as easily be the Rams, but I don't have a reason to say the Colts don't win, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Before watching the live, watched the last two Colts games the last couple of nights, and I thought, okay, it's Cinderella turning to a pumpkin, right? And it does feel like that's something that could happen sooner than later down the line. But I mean, this team has legitimate talent. They have really good coaching, and you have really good addition in Tyler Warren. I mean, the pass rush definitely is a concern. The secondary, I think, can be exploited by a really good quarterback and Matthew Stafford with really good receivers. I just look at this Rams defense, and if you're getting pressure with your front four, you're playing gap and a half, and you're sounding your gap control, and you can find some way to not stop but just limit the big plays with Jonathan Taylor, then you give your secondary a breather a little bit. But to say that I'm not concerned about the Rams secondary when their game plan, it materialized. You turned Jalen Hurts into a passer, and he beat you as a passer. And Daniel Jones is a more gifted passer than Jalen Hurts. So I wake up at 3:30 in the morning, a cold sweat, thinking of this Rams secondary. It definitely gives me concern. I think that this is going to be the best Matthew Stafford game of the year, just because he's getting it out quicker than ever. He hopefully, even though the Rams offensive line has been the second worst in pass pro this year, he's going to hopefully have more time to throw. The Rams have found a two-headed monster running game with Kyren Williams and Blake Corum, and they realize what's at stake. Like I said, this is a team that they don't look. If you're the Colts, you're like, holy crap, like we got this big this window now. It was Steichen and young pieces and things like that, a future in Indy. The Rams are like, hey, this is all in, man. Like, this is this year and maybe next year's tops with Matthew Stafford, and you can't drop a game to a Colts team after having a heartbreak loss. That would just totally change the tenor and the mood of the season. So I think you have to find a way to win this one. I think you're going to see a nice offensive output. And wow, what do you know? Rams guy picks Rams, Colts guy picks Colts. What do you know, right? I mean, but that's kind of how this one is ending. But this is let's be honest, like, that's why, like, all these, like, oh, the schedule release show, Jake. Oh, the June schedule. Let's go game by game prediction. Like, all that is just, it's fun, but it's like, it's trying to like do like a March Madness bracket, right?
Mm-hmm.
It really means next to nothing, right? I mean, this Colts team is better than anyone could have predicted.
Yeah, I would agree. But at the beginning of the season, before anything started, I said their window was probably like 7 to 10 to 10 and 7 max. Like, if you're being really optimistic, and they're already at 3 wins, and then you look at their schedule and it's like, this team is capable of 11 or 12 wins, maybe, which seems crazy to think again back in June. But yeah, when things are clicking like they are right now, I mean, yes, part of you is just waiting for the other shoe to drop, but offensively, at least, you're looking at it and you're like, there's been no weak points so far to this offense, especially when you're getting the quarterback play that you're getting and the run game that you're getting and the coaching. It's like, it's probably not sustainable to average 34 points and over 400 yards a game throughout the year, but like some of this is going to keep up at a high level, you got to imagine.
I totally agree that it's a tough test for this Rams defense, and it's going to be a test for this Colts offense to come out west and continue for what they've done.
Jake is available for you on Locked On Colts. Doug is available for you on Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, the Jaguars and the 49ers, two teams looking to pick up big wins, and hopefully that can be a very big one for them as the season goes along. Everyone is important in the NFL. And so you have Tony Wiggins of Locked On Jaguars and Brian Peacock, Locked On 49ers, talking about keys to victory and so much more.
So one of the aspects, Wig, and you kind of started to paint the picture there in the last segment about the 49ers offense and the keys to victory and how this goes and defending the run. So far this season, especially with all the injuries the 49ers have had, they've really leaned on their guy, Christian McCaffrey. He's got the most touches, 77 touches on offense, the most in the NFL right now. A lot of those out of the backfield as a receiver. But you mentioned the motion and getting guys moving and the play action and the bootlegs. We've seen it multiple times now. Juszczyk last week. It was Luke Farrell in week 2, I believe it was, with just a walk-in touchdown. It's easy because you got 10 guys on the opposing defense that fight on that play action fake, and all of a sudden Mac Jones says, nope, I'm going to take this and bootleg around, and the entire defense is like, oh yeah, there's 10 other guys on this team, not just Christian McCaffrey. We're all over here to tackle 23, and this guy's got an easy touchdown. Kyle Shanahan really good at pulling those strings, and it's the gravity that Christian McCaffrey brings, even when he's not getting the ball. So you got to stay home, and teams have done a really good job actually against the 49ers. They're averaging like 3.5 yards per carry right now. They want that to improve, but it's not just throwing to Ricky Pearsall, it's also throwing to Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield. So can the Jaguars still defend the run is going to be a key one here, while also staying at home and covering Ricky Pearsall, covering Demarcus Robinson. We'll see what he looks like now for the first time in a regular season game in a 49ers uniform, and covering Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield.
Yeah, they can. It's because of their defense and their team speed. First of all, the world, one team at a time, is about to see how good Trayvon Walker is. I know Aiden Hutchinson's great, and most people believe that he should have been picked ahead of Trayvon Walker. I'm going to tell you something. I think this is the stat. If it's not, it's really close. You know how many sacks Trayvon has in his last 23 games? I'm just going to tell you to guess the number.
Oh, I think he had 10 sacks last year, right? So
he has 18 sacks in his last 23 games. So for all the people, this is the second year in a row he had 10 plus sacks. And then he is a game plan wrecker and destroyer with all the little dirty work. The thing, coaches, not fans, but coaches watch that tape. Mike Tomlin said he's an absolute 44 is the problem. He's the game wrecker. That was 2 years ago. So people don't necessarily understand exactly how good Trayvon Walker really is. And when you talked about Michael Williams, you're right. Georgia doesn't teach those dudes how to pass rush. Nolan Smith didn't come into the league rushing the pass. They teach people to play gap and hold and to make sure that draw plays don't work, scrambling quarterbacks don't work. And then they let the other people in the back do all the heavy lifting when it comes to tackling people in the flat. But you're going to see how good he is. Josh Allen is very, very good, leads the league. This duo leads the league in pressures. Eric Armstead is coming home. He is finally back inside where he needs to be instead of playing the big end position, which I don't know what the hell they were thinking about last year, doing that full time, because we know he did a little bit of both in San Francisco, but he's coming back and he's playing better at the 3 technique. And then Devon Hamilton, I'm going to tell you who's playing well. Devin Lloyd, former first-round pick Devin Lloyd, who did not get his 5th-year option picked up. Devin Lloyd has been lights out. And a lot of people comped him to Fred Warner because they were these hybrid players in college where they played a little safety, played a little Mike, played a little outside. Devin Lloyd has finally found a home at Anthony Campanile's defense that has allowed him to stand next to Foye Oluokun and be a really, really good player. So everybody does their job. Everybody stays home. Jordan Lewis has been great as an addition from Dallas. He's playing like an all-pro. They tackle well in the open field. So that's why I'm not too afraid about Christian McCaffrey, although you should be always afraid about Christian McCaffrey. It really comes down to me of who plays offensively. When you flip it over to the other side, Liam Cohen, coach with the Rams, is very, very familiar with what they're doing, has a lot of respect for Kyle. And I know he will have a little bit of a few things up his sleeve when it comes to from his time in LA, when it comes to trying to dial some things up. So to me, it's going to be about execution. I said execution. Liam Cohen talked today about patience, that the 49ers don't give you a whole bunch of chunk plays, but they make you execute 10, 12 play drives, and they sit and wait on that mistake. And they usually take advantage of it. I think that's going to be the key for my side of it. What do you see the path to victory for you guys?
I think you kind of laid a lot of it out there. That's going to be really important, is who makes the mistakes and who don't. And I think it's, it's kind of too easy sometimes to be like, oh, whoever wins the turnover battle.
Yeah.
The Jaguars, though, this is number 1 against number 32. The 49ers haven't picked off a pass in 10 games, going back to last year. It's been almost a calendar year since the 49ers picked off a sneaking pass. The Jacksonville Jaguars, well, and if you have 0, you're 32 in the NFL in interceptions, right? The Jaguars are number 1 with 7 picks so far this season. And Mac Jones had an ugly interception last week. Brock Purdy threw the ball to the other team too many times in week 1. Niners came out ahead and were victorious in the first 3 weeks of the season. But if the Jacksonville Jaguars are out here picking off passes and the Niners are turning the ball over and not executing like you just laid out, then that is easily the path for a victory for the Jaguars and a loss to the 49ers. And the 49ers, without an extra pass rusher and Nick Bosa, need to be able to pressure Trevor Lawrence into some of those mistakes. And so for the 49ers, you can't lose that turnover battle. Start throwing the ball to the other team, and you need to start creating some of your own plays. Can they get after the quarterback minus Nick Bosa is my big question. I think they're going to be okay against the run. And again, this isn't as much of a path to victory as I'm just kind of throwing out questions, and I'm just a little bit curious. What's this going to look like? Does the Nick Bosa injury, does it turn out to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, or an entire bale of hay that breaks the camel's back as far as the injuries that the 49ers have dealt with this year? But if you're able to get it going on the ground, play Kyle Shanahan football, we know he can scheme open some plays in the passing game, and you're not making mistakes, and the defense is able to stop the run and get into some of those third down situations where Robert Saleh has been a little bit more creative, blitzing, showing some looks, some simulated pressures, bringing, some guys on one side, dropping some guys back. He's got the turbo package going where they're trying to throw Yetur Gross-Matos on the inside and Mykel Williams on the inside. Can you still find some ways to get after the quarterback? Then that'll be the path to victory for the San Francisco 49ers in week 4 as they lick their wounds and just try to figure out what kind of football team they're going to be, which is an odd thing to say about a team that's 3-0. You usually have a better idea of what a team is, but with the injuries the 49ers have dealt with, it's not quite that football team right now, Wig, but it's going to be fun. I can't wait to see what this new version of the Jacksonville Jaguars looks like Sunday.
Yeah, it can look pretty at times, but they have had 3 gritty games, and I think that's where we're going to park until they tell me otherwise. They're going to get in these gritty 23-17 games that come down to the last drive and having to make a stop. And I think that's the way they're going to win until they figure it all out. But a win is a win, and I'll take it. And I think the Jags are going to go to 3-1 after Sunday.
Ooh, okay. And the Niners are actually favored by 3.5 right now at home against the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's a tough one because I think it is going to be a grinded out game. It's been some ugly wins so far this year for the 49ers. I like the Niners to win. I don't know if I like them to win by a lot, and anything more than a field goal is hard to project right now. But I'm with you, man. This is going to be a grinded out game for the Niners and the Jaguars in week 4, which means the team that makes the fewest mistakes is probably the team that's going to win this one.
If I'm y'all, I'm being honest with you. I'm trying to help you out. Look, you need to get some money in your pocket before Christmas. Go to FanDuel and take the money line. Don't take no points. Take the Jaguars. Last I checked, it was plus 145. Go and take the Jaguars money line. I'm telling you, they're going to beat San Francisco Sunday.
Oh, man. I don't know. It's tough to bet against that Kyle Shanahan, Robert Saleh combination. They do great things together, Wig, no matter who's out there.
Be sure to check out Tony over at Locked On Jaguars and Brian over at Locked On 49ers, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Last up in the 4 p.m. slate of games, the Bears and the Raiders. Geno Smith versus Caleb Williams is the quarterback matchup there. And Lauren Cox of Locked On Bears, as well as your boy Q of Locked On Raiders, talk about who are the biggest players that could have impacts on this game and so much more.
All right, as we continue our crossover Thursday, Locked On Bears, Locked On Raiders podcast, want to get into some keys to victory for both teams and then where we see this one going. And Q, we started talking about at the end there that the whole marriage of Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams has been about, Caleb Williams is very good outside of structure, but too often in his rookie season, that was the whole offense. Like the plays would break down, he'd have to just try and create something over and over again, and he could do it a few times very, very well. And then when you make that your whole offense, it's just not something that's sustainable. And so it's been finding this marriage of Ben Johnson gives them all the answers to the test, 3-step drop, hitch, throw, or 5-step drop, hitch, like matching up the footwork to the timing so that everything is that Jared Goff style of Lions offense. And then if it's not there, or if the offensive line breaks down, then you take the leash off. And on that play, then you break the rules, you let them loose and make those special plays. And you kind of hope that over the course of the game, it's, 80%, 90% within structure on time, and that he can make those 10 to 20% of the rest of the plays to be special and put your team over the top. And so the Raiders' ability to disrupt that initial timing with the pass rush, with the blitz, maybe with disguised coverages on the back end, like that's going to be what's key to the Bears, winning and keeping the offensive success going, or the Raiders' ability to slow down all the progress Chicago feels like it's made.
The funny thing about this is, based off of what Caleb Williams does really good, where, he's rolling out and he makes some plays and he's got a hell of an arm. We obviously know that. I think that the best approach for the Raiders defensively is to try to, cage him in, right? Keep him in the pocket and make him step up and hope that the defensive tackles are able to step up and make a play, really collapse the pocket on him as opposed to letting him roll out. Now, a lot of times when you make a quarterback roll out and they've got to throw the ball on the run, they turn it into a mistake, right? It all of a sudden is like, oh no, you don't want to do that, throw the ball across their body or whatever and across the field. And a lot of times interceptions happen, but a lot of times Caleb starts thriving is from what I've seen, in that kind of a moment. So for the Raiders, they may want to try to fence him in as much as possible, just collapse that pocket and then really give him nowhere to go, maybe backpedal. And when he's backpedaling, that's a different ball game. So, you mentioned the footwork, and I know that that's been a big issue. Disrupt that timing. With Ben Johnson, that offense is really based off of, timing and steps and having everything on par with each other. That's what you got to do is really create that uncertainty with Caleb Williams in the pocket. That's how I think that they have the most success with him, trying to defend it and slow him down.
Where do you see that with Geno in terms of like 3 interceptions against the Chargers and seem to be a little bit, I don't know if more reckless is the term there, versus like taking care of the ball a lot better against Washington, but obviously, still not enough to win that game either. Like what has been the difference between when that Raiders offense is thriving and when it's struggling? And I guess, how do you apply that to then what we're going to see on Sunday?
Yeah, against the Chargers, man, he was jacked up. He was fired up about the Monday night game. It was the season home opener. The crowd was there. It was, 90% Raider Nation was there, where this game will not be that. It'll probably be 50-50 Bears and Raider fans. But he was just so amped up, and he was trying to force everything. And he told us afterwards, like, hey, man, I can't do that. I believe in my arm. I have confidence. I want to get aggressive. And the Chargers didn't allow him to beat them deep. And so they said, okay, you're going to have to dink and dunk. You're going to have to settle for, plays underneath, and then we're going to rally and come up and tackle. And he wanted to take what he wanted, right, as opposed to what the defense gave him. And so he put the ball in harm's way, and it resulted in 3 interceptions. And so he said he can't do that. He was way more efficient with that on Sunday against the Commanders, even though a lot of the stats came late and the Commanders blew out the Raiders. The thing about it is, if he doesn't have any time to set his feet and try to let a play develop, he's kind of running for his life, and that's what he's been doing. He's done a good job of it, of escaping pressure, but he still got sacked 5 times on Sunday. So again, it goes back to the offensive line, because what you'll notice from Geno is when he gets that pressure immediately, he's not keeping his eyes down the field. He's looking around the pocket, who's coming at him, and how do I escape? Right. And so that's the biggest issue. So then he's just, trying to make something happen. And to his credit, he was able to roll out, escape a few other sacks, and then get the ball to guys like Jack Besh and Dante Thornton and, Jacoby Myers and get the ball to him. But it's so off schedule and it's so just kind of out of rhythm that it doesn't really go for what it should be. So, I mean, again, it's going to be this Raiders offensive line. If Jackson Powers-Johnson is in the lineup like I think he's going to be, then it's got to start to gel and start to come together. They've got to give Geno some time, and they also have got to get Ashton Genty going and more than he's been going so far. He didn't do bad last week, had 63 yards, but obviously that's not the production he's looking for.
Yeah, and I think from a Chicago Bears perspective, like the strategy might just have to be like get enough of a lead that the Raiders can't run the ball with Genty, because I do think Las Vegas will get that going a little bit. Like he'll be able to get his 4 or 5 yards a carry here, and you'll feel like, oh, they're making some real progress in the ground game, and you'll maybe be wondering, well, they really should stick with this even more, and it'll depend on like if the Raiders can start fast and either maintain a lead or keep it a 1-score game and feel like they can slow things down and run the ball. Yep. I think that's a really clear formula for them to succeed this game and keep the ball out of Caleb Williams' hands and kind of take their time driving the ball downfield. But if the Bears come out hot like they did last week against the Cowboys and score on their first 2 drives and then put that pressure on Geno and have to do a little bit more, yep, I think that's when you can kind of see this game flip either direction. So I guess with that as the preamble, where do you see this one going? What's your confidence level in the Raiders getting back into a win column? And how do you see it shaking out?
This was a tough one, Lauren, because I feel like the Raiders have to win it, right? And technically there's no must-win game in week 4, but you don't want to be 1-3 because then you're starting to hear here we go again, same old Raiders, right? And then there may be some doubt creeping into the mind of some of the players in the locker room that have been there, done that. Like, hey, everything sounded good this offseason. Pete Carroll's this, Pete Carroll's that. And yet here we are with the same record as we've had before, 1-3. If they win this game and go 2-2, one, that bad taste of that game against Washington will be out of their mouth. They'll say, hey, we're 2-2 after 4 games. We're right in the thick of things. The Chargers are doing really good in the division, but everyone else is right where we are anyway at 1-2. So I feel like the pressure is going to be on the Raiders to win this game more than the pressure is going to be on the Bears to win this game. They have to run the ball. They have to, right? You'll know how this game goes, Lauren, based off when Genty's getting the majority of his carries. If he's getting it all in the first quarter or even the first half, and then you don't see him carrying the rock that often in the second half, then the Bears are, like you said, up early, and they're not allowing them to get into their game plan. They want to do exactly what you said. You hit it right on the head. They want to be running the ball 8, 9, 10 times in the fourth quarter, right, in the second half, trying to salt the game away and playing that kind of a game, take the air out of the stadium. That's what they want. Now, they did that week 1 against the Patriots. They obviously didn't do it week 2 or week 3. So that's how they want to play their game. If the Bears allow them to do it and hang around and keep it close, they will. But like you said, if the Bears get out early, then it's going to be a long day at the office for the Raiders. They cannot play one-dimensional football. It's just not going to work like it did week 1 against the Patriots. I think the Bears have an actual better roster as far as offensive talent than the Patriots do. So I think that the Raiders have to be able to run the ball. They have to get pressure on Caleb Williams and probably create a couple turnovers to win this game. Because they have to win this game, in my opinion, to go 2-2, I'm going to rock with them and say they're going to get it done. But I'll tell you what, man, this is not an easy timeout at all, because it seems like the Bears are ascending and the Raiders losing 2 straight, maybe on the decline, and that's not good for the Raiders at all.
I think my prediction for this game is something that it's going to be hard to definitively give right now, because I think the Bears winning and losing to me is going to depend super heavily on how this injury report plays out the rest of the week. Because again, Wednesday, T.J. Edwards did not practice. Kyler Gordon did not practice. Grady Jarrett did not practice. Colston Loveland did not practice. Darnell Wright did not practice. If you're missing all 5 of those starting caliber players, I'm not sure that you can beat the Raiders. But if you get Kyler Gordon teased on Instagram that he might be coming back this week, so like if Darnell Wright's good to go and you get Gordon back, you can get by with a couple of these guys being absent. But if all 5 of those guys are done, that's going to be tough. So I think that's kind of where I'm split. Like if I have to give an official prediction, I think a healthy Bears team or a healthier Bears team wins this game. I think a more injured Bears team maybe falls a little bit short. So I don't know which one.
That's fair. No, it's fair.
Plus you got a couple other guys limited and banged up. So like I'll say, if the Bears are healthier, I think they can win. I think they'll win this game. I think there's a winnable game. If they're banged up, it might be too much to overcome.
Check out Q over at Locked On Raiders and Lauren over at Locked On Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That'll do it for the 4 p.m. slate of games, but not for us again, as we still got the prime time action to get into. Don't go anywhere. Plenty still coming up on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. First, this show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but. From smooth handling to intuitive controls, With all-wheel drive, standard, and every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Ultimate NFL pregame show, moving right along. Kevin Oestreicher still rocking out with you, diving into NFL content and coverage with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's dive into these primetime games because we got a lot of these, and they are very good ones. First of all, we got the Micah Parsons Bowl on Sunday night, the Packers and the Cowboys. Micah Parsons' revenge game could be incoming. Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers and Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys. They talk about how Micah can play and a lot more.
Welcome back to this crossover edition of the Locked On Packers and Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL show. 2 podcasts every single day, 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Peter, how did the Packers win this game? Like what couple things do they need to do to secure a victory and improve to 3-1?
I think it's protect Jordan Love. That is job one. And I said last week, job 1, 2, 3, and 4 is protect or is block Myles Garrett. There is not a player like that for the Dallas Cowboys. But if they can protect Jordan Love, I think they're going to be enough opportunities against this Cowboys team to generate explosives, to convert on third down. For all the issues the Packers had last week, third down was not one of them. They actually performed pretty well on third down overall. It was that they couldn't get out of their own way. It's false starts, it's penalties. And that's the second part of this. Just get rid of the pre-snap penalties. The pre-snap penalties were killers last week. There were 3rd and 1 becomes 3rd and 6. 3rd and 4 becomes 3rd and 9. Like that kind of stuff, especially against a team that, let's be honest, like the Cowboys are not as good as the Packers.
No.
You lose games in the NFL because you don't play like the better team. When you are the more talented team, if you don't play like it, you're going to lose. Like the talent difference is small. This is not college, where you go out and you play Our Little Sisters of Perpetual Sorrow in week 1 to get ready for your actual season. It doesn't happen like that. So that's protect Jordan Love and the pre-snap penalties. Micah Parsons lined up offsides on the final drive, gifted the Browns 5 yards. The Browns couldn't get 5 yards of play all game. They were averaging 3.9 yards per play all game. You just gift them 5 yards. That kind of stuff can't. And by the way, Micah took responsibility for that, said they didn't bring me here to be offsides, but he's lined up offsides, I think, like in every game. Line up onside. Come on. And it's those kinds of little mistakes. They just can't happen. They didn't happen in week 1. The Packers, I believe, had 3 penalties in week 1. Then they had 10 and 14 the last 2 weeks. Get rid of those penalties. And I just feel like the talent then wins out.
And for Dallas, it's all about winning in the margins, right? Because you're right. They are not as good as the Packers, even when they're fully healthy. You know, this is a team on FanDuel that had a win projection of 7.5 with Micah Parsons, right? Like they're clearly not the better team, but that doesn't mean you can't win games like this. And it starts for me on special teams. The Cowboys have a really good special teams unit with Brandon Aubrey, who for my money is the best kicker in the NFL. Yeah. Brian Anger, one of the better punters in the league. Kevontae Turpin, probably the best kick returner. You're going to have to make plays in that phase of the game to make up for, you know, an offense that has injuries and a defense that's not very good. So can you block a kick like Cleveland did last week? Can you have better field positions? I know it was a lot of fun. Can you start drives at the 38-yard line rather than the 22 and give your offense a shorter field?
Yeah.
That's the kind of things you have to get. If the Cowboys lose the special teams battle, they have absolutely no chance on Sunday. None.
Well, the good news for Dallas is Rich Bisaccia has not fixed the special teams. The special teams have been a problem really every year for the Packers to some degree, whether it's the kicker. They fixed the kicker with Brandon McManus, but like Brandon McManus, the kick that got blocked was a low kick on a makeable, like we're talking about a low 40s yard field goal. Like this should have been a gimme. They got blown up on the interior to get that block. Shelby Harris, one of the best in the NFL at doing that, but still, like that's ridiculous. So that is a problem. And I said it during the week. I said one of the paths for the Browns is specialty. You return a kick for a touchdown or you block a punt. I didn't think blocking the game-winning field goal would be on the docket there, but that's what happened. And so I think you're right. The special teams piece of that, like for the Packers, just don't lose emphatically. Don't have a punt blocked. Don't have a kick blocked. If Brandon Aubrey is going to make 60-yarders, like that's fine. You're not going to lose on 6 60-yard kicks.
Yeah. The other thing for the Cowboys is just.
Although I do remember 1996. When was it? Who was the kicker in 96? Was that Boniol?
Chris Boniol. Yeah.
And he made 7 7 field goals to beat the Packers in Dallas the year they won the Super Bowl. It was 21 points. And I remember like I had to go to bed because I was 9 or whatever. And I woke up and I saw the final score and I was like, oh, and then I realized it was field goals. And I was like, oh, come on, Green Bay. Like, you didn't score any points.
It's not like Mason Crosby didn't get them back,
Listen,
a little bit later.
I'm offering a heartfelt memory about a Cowboys win. You gotta go with me on that.
Last thing before we go, we're not going to do predictions, but Landon McCool, my co-host, we were talking about this game. We think if the Cowboys were to pull off this upset, they are currently, I think, 7-point underdogs right now on FanDuel. It might be the biggest upset that they've had, especially from an emotional standpoint, in the last 20 years. And I know a week 4 game really doesn't feel like a big upset.
No, but I don't think that's crazy. Like, I really don't, because of the Micah Parsons factor.
Yeah.
Because of the expectations coming in, because of CeeDee Lamb, because of Tyler Booker, it would be a little bit like the 2015 game, right? The Matt Flynn game when the Packers come in and they come back from 2 touchdowns down to beat the Cowboys in Dallas.
That's a great memory. It's fine.
But you flip it. And it would feel like that, even though Dak Prescott is not Matt Flynn, obviously. But that is interesting. And that I think there is quietly more pressure on Green Bay in a game where they are favored by a touchdown.
Because everybody thinks that Green Bay is going to win this game, and they're going to win going away.
I agree, but I think there's quietly more pressure on Green Bay than maybe the average fan would realize in a spot like this because of what you're saying. Like, it would just be a huge lift for the Cowboys season if they could win a game like this. Like, you can treat it, and I don't know if Brian Schottenheimer is going to, but you could treat it like your Super Bowl. Hey, we win this game, and the rest of our season is out in front of us. We lost a game we probably should have won in week 1, frankly. And you have a brain fart game last week. Both of these teams kind of coming off those kinds of games where you have a Murphy's Law finish. It would now you're making me nervous that this would be the biggest upset in 20 years. But I think that also says something about the Cowboys. Like, they've been a pretty good team for a long time. They haven't been in a position to upset anybody by a touchdown since like Quincy Carter. This has just been a good, steady franchise, even if they haven't been a Super Bowl contender for 20 years now.
Dive into Locked On Cowboys with Marcus. Dive into Locked On Packers with Peter, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, Monday night doubleheader, Jets and Dolphins in an AFC East battle. Both these teams need a win badly. So Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins and John Butchko of Locked On Jets talk about what each team needs to do to get the job done.
John, I will give the floor to you here. 3 keys to victory for the New York Jets. What does that look like, and which one is maybe the most probable or the least probable in your eyes for the Jets to achieve?
Okay, my number 1 key is I think the Jets need to get their screen game working. It really has not been a part of the offense so far, and that's been a surprise to me because the Jets have 3 backs who can catch the football in Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, and Isaiah Davis, and the rest of the pass catching group is kind of deficient in talent. So Garrett Wilson's obviously a very good number 1 receiver, but nobody's really emerged as the number 2 receiver in the offense. At tight end, you have a player who has a lot of promise in Mason Taylor, but he's still a work in progress. He's a rookie. He's a 2nd-round pick. It's probably going to take some time for Mason Taylor to get going. By the way, Mason Taylor is the son of Dolphins Hall of Famer Jason Taylor and the nephew of Zach Thomas, so a guy who's got Dolphins ties as well. But we talked a little bit earlier. One of the things I said was the Jets need to come up with solutions for the blitz. And one of the best solutions you can have against the blitz is a screen pass. The Jets tried to use a couple screen passes in the Tampa Bay game. I don't think that they were super well designed. I think those sometimes you see plays where you can envision like the coach working on the chalkboard. He thinks this is a great idea, and then you get on the field, it doesn't work quite as well. There were a couple of times where I think they asked Armand Membu to cover too much ground to try and throw a block on a wide receiver screen. And I imagine like Tanner Engstrand, the offensive coordinator, was, he was kind of in his office. He thinks, oh, we have the super athletic guy we just drafted out of Missouri. He can hit this block. And as athletic as Membu is, they probably asked him to do a little bit too much. So I think part of it, they have to scheme up their screens a little bit better, but they really haven't leaned into it the way I thought they would as part of this offense. And I think that's part of the reason that they've struggled to deal with these blitzes. So that's number 1 for me. Number 2 is I think the Jets are going to have to play a lot of zone in this game for the reasons I mentioned. They got issues with Brandon Stevens. I think that this Miami receiving group, the speed that they possess, would give the Jets issues if they play too much one-on-one man coverage. Aaron Glenn loves to play man coverage. He loves to blitz. I think the Jets are going to have to take their foot off the pedal a little bit. Again, I know like the season's not, I know things haven't been going great on the Miami offense, but Jets defense has not been functioning at a high level. And their style, I think, plays into Miami's hands. So I think that they will have, I think they're going to have issues if they try and play a lot of man coverage. And the third, force a turnover. I mean, it's unbelievable how the Jets haven't been able to force a turnover. I mean, some of this has been ridiculous luck. I mean, there have been a couple of fumbles where like guy fumbles and the ball like bounces to where 3 of the opponents are and no Jets are. But the Jets also dropped some interceptions in week 1. Brandon Stevens and Michael Carter II both dropped interceptable passes by Aaron Rodgers. Either of those could have really swung that game against Pittsburgh. So, there's some randomness involved in turnovers, but there's also been situations where the Jets have not been taking advantage of opportunities that have presented themselves. And I think of these 3, the most likely is the Jets are going to start relying on the screen game because they need to come up with some answers on offense, not just against the blitz. I mean, I think this offense has struggled for large portions of the last 2 games. I mean, they only really got things going in the fourth quarter against Tampa Bay after the Bucs kind of backed off and started playing prevent looks. And I just think like if you look at this personnel, there aren't really many other places the Jets can go other than starting to get the running backs more involved. And I think that primarily will be on the screen game. So that I think those are the 3 things I'm looking at from the Jets' perspective in this one.
Yeah, I think for me, the first one is you have to remove the bonehead play on special teams. The Dolphins, the last 2 weeks, they had a punt return for a touchdown, and on the ensuing kickoff, gave up a touchdown on the ensuing kickoff and gave it right back. It looked like the kick wasn't quite right. It looked like that you had a missed tackle opportunity in the hole. Looked like you didn't have good pursuit angles initially on the play because the kick was wrong. So that's one. And then it's 21-21 midway through the fourth quarter. And Zach Sealer roughs the punter on your 3rd consecutive punt against Josh Allen, and you gave him the ball on after that punt. The Bills got the ball back because of the penalty on the plus 36-yard line. I'll give you one guess what happened with that. You make those mistakes against the Bills, they're going to score touchdowns. And that was the deciding score in the game when it was all said and done. So you can't beat yourself in the phase of the game in which the Dolphins have actually shown a lot of really good hitting yardage and field position elements to their special teams unit. And that's not been the case. They made the change this year from Danny Crossman to Craig Aukerman. I think if you remove those 2 special teams mishaps, the special teams unit would be the best performing unit on the team. Now, those things happened, so I can't say that. But if you can remove that critical error, trying to be extra and do too much, I think special teams can be an element where the Dolphins could potentially have an edge because they've otherwise played well through the first 3 weeks. I think on offense, the big point of emphasis for me is I want to try to get Jalen Waddle more involved in the offense. Tyreek Hill, they had the running game going. Tyreek Hill finishes the week 3 game against Buffalo with 10 targets. Jalen Waddle has 6. Waddle's the guy that spent the whole offseason program as the number 1 with Tua because Tyreek had wrist surgery. And then Tyreek had a hip flexor or a low back or whatever it was, and he missed almost all of training camp. And then you get back into the games and we're force feeding Tyreek Hill the football again. I think it's one of those things where I think the primary key to success is running the ball. But from a passing game perspective, I think as we've outlined with the matchups, if the Jets are going to say we're going to play Sauce Gardner over top of Tyreek Hill, then Jalen Waddle needs a heavier dosage and volume of targets than what he has been getting through the first 3 weeks. And he was effective with the targets that he's gotten the last 2 weeks. With the touchdown catch and running by a pressed up corner and getting outside of a safety in a cover 2 look with the corner clouded up against the Patriots and a bunch of outbreaking routes. Teams are like giving the Dolphins those outside the numbers throws, and Waddle's creating separation and taking them. So that's another one for me. And then defensively, I think this has to start with first down run defense. You have to earn the right to rush the passer. It's a phrase that a couple of members of the Dolphins locker room have said for years. And, the Dolphins, when the Bills were faced with 3rd and 3 or less, they were 6 for 6 on conversion opportunities. When it was 7 or more yards, the Bills were 0 for 5. And sometimes it can just be as simple as that. And I think it has to be as simple as that for Miami because their 3rd and 4th down defense has been horrible, but it's because teams have been living in short yardage situations on 3rd downs against them. So I think you have to force those long and late down opportunities, and you do that by winning on 1st and 10. So those are my keys to victory. I think the most likely of those to happen, look, just don't do something silly on special teams. That should not be too hard to ask. I think the toughest one is the Jets. I think the strength of their offensive roster does lie with the physicality and athleticism of those guys up front. I think that can really test Miami in that regard.
Check out Kyle over at Locked On Dolphins. Check out John over at Locked On Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Last up, the Bengals and the Broncos. The Broncos and the Bengals, two AFC teams, definitely need a win. I know the Bengals, with Joe Burrow being out, they need every win they can get. And the Broncos, they are looking to keep pace in that AFC West. So, Sayer Bedinger of Locked On Broncos and James Rapien of Locked On Bengals talk about the biggest storylines in the game.
Winning in the trenches and minimizing mistakes, those are going to be absolutely critical for both the Broncos and the Bengals as they take each other on here Monday Night Football. Broncos country, Bengals fans, once again, just want to say we appreciate you all so much for listening, for making us your first listen of the day every single day. If you haven't done so already, we encourage you hit subscribe and become part of our communities at Locked On Broncos and Locked On Bengals as well. James, I want to throw it to you here. Your final thoughts maybe for this matchup going in, maybe your gut instinct. Obviously, we talked about winning in the trenches being important. What's your kind of feel for this game and the Bengals win if sort of a thing?
Oh, there's a few things here. The first one is they have to make sure that their offensive line has the best game they've had all year. And so it can't just be they're really good at protecting Jake Browning, because I think they need to run block at an extremely high level, and they haven't done that to this point. They've been really, really bad at it. So it's all across the board. Open up running lanes for Chase Brown, protect Jake, because if you open up running lanes and you're protecting Jake early, well, that's going to open up some play action. That's going to give you it's going to take pressure off of this backup quarterback on the road Monday night, all of the things that come with that in a not just pressure-filled environment for him, but against a team with their back against the wall in the Denver Broncos. So I expect that defense to be flying around. Number two, their wide receivers, they have to win. They have to have get the better of this Denver Broncos secondary. And it doesn't have to be Jamar Chase versus Patrick Surtain. And that doesn't mean it can't be. Of course it can. And I wouldn't shy away from that. But to me, you have to find a way to get these guys going. Last week, when things really got away, the Vikings were up 34-3 at halftime. So the game's over at the half. With 2 minutes to go in the half, Jamar Chase had 2 catches for 3 yards. T. Higgins had 1 catch for 15 yards. Jamar ended up with 5 for 50. T, that same 1 for 15. That cannot be the case. And if it is, then these other weapons have to have really huge games. And I think that that's unrealistic. So there's that. And then the last thing, contain these weapons for the Broncos and don't let Bo Nix do what he did towards the end of that game last year, where he was able to, just the moon ball, the deep ball, it worked. And the guy I referred to earlier in the pod, Troy Franklin. I loved him pre-draft. I don't know why the Bengals didn't take him 80th overall. They took Jermaine Burton instead. They should have taken Troy Franklin. It's very clear. Do not let Troy Franklin beat you deep. I think that's a big one.
Yeah, Troy Franklin had a breakout game against the Indianapolis Colts in week 2 and then was kind of non-existent in week 3, which was really surprising to everybody because of it was a very concerted effort to get him the ball. I call them manufactured touches. Some people are like, what the heck does that even mean? Well, what I mean is that they're deliberately trying to get him the ball at the start of the play. It's not like a progression or things like that. I mean, you are going to Troy Franklin, get him the ball quickly, let him do his thing, because Sean Payton loves his abilities after the catch. So we'll see if he can bounce back on Monday Night Football after really no involvement against the Chargers. But I think the Broncos win this game if Bo Nix plays up to the level that we've seen he's capable of, especially in these big moments. We've seen him come through at times, but the offensive overall outfit just hasn't been efficient enough for the Denver Broncos. So they really need to take that next step as an offense. And I think minimizing the mistakes, like I teased earlier, James, obviously in the NFL, you want to win the turnover battle. The Broncos won the turnover battle against the Chargers and still couldn't win because they committed 10 penalties. You had way too many missed opportunities offensively. You would love to see this Broncos team play complementary football for once. And I know that it's it's still an NFL team. You're going up against a backup quarterback. You can't write anybody off. I think the Broncos maybe let a little bit of the noise preseason get to them a little bit. Maybe Sean Payton did a little too much talking, so really just kind of these first 3 games and 2 losses of heartbreaking variety, just absolutely gut-wrenching variety. I mean, that's got to humble you a little bit going into this game. You need to play with a chip on your shoulder going into this primetime matchup. So I think the Broncos win the game if Bo Nix operates the offense efficiently and effectively, and if they minimize the mistakes here against the Bengals.
Yeah, it's totally fair. And I think as a lot of these keys go, you could say the same thing. They need Jake Browning to be efficient, not turn the ball over, which he's done. 5 interceptions now in just over 6 quarters of football. That can't be the case. Those are back-breaking plays, and he's going to be under pressure. And so how do they use their best weapons, which are their receivers and their running back and their offensive skill players, and also avoid the big swing turnover plays? Huge. And then on the flip side, in the Bengals' 2 wins, they won the turnover battle and had 2 interceptions in each of those wins, even though they didn't play great. Goes a long way if you can find a way to intercept Bo Nix once or twice for sure. So I think that's going to be a huge factor in who wins on Monday.
Yeah, it really is. And ultimately, I think you said it best earlier. If the Broncos lose this game, I mean, the narrative is going to be really interesting, not just in terms of the local reaction, but in terms of the national reaction, because again, it's an NFL team. These guys get paid to play. They've still got great players, obviously. But if you, on your home field, get beat by the Bengals backup quarterback when you, like you said, got your backs up against the wall, the pressure's on, must-win situation, I mean, what would be your read on that from the outside perspective of saying, hey, I mean, shoot, like, I know it's one game, it's still early in the regular season, but this would say a lot, I would think, about the way that Sean Payton is kind of leading the team right now.
Yeah, I think it would be, oh my goodness, what's wrong in Denver? And I do think that the Bengals could use that to their advantage a little bit. They should be able to play a little pressure free and be just as motivated as Denver, because they're coming off of the worst loss in franchise history. I mean, 48-10, it's literally the worst. They've never lost by 38. And they were down by 45 at one point, which is the largest deficit ever in a game in franchise history. So they have a ton to prove, but the Broncos are the ones I think that have the pressure, because I would expect them to win. And so is that good or bad? A lot of teams usually respond, or the good teams respond well in those situations and come out with their hair on fire. So it could be awful for the Bengals in that scenario. Or maybe it's the other way and the Bengals hang in it early and weather the storm, and then that pressure really starts to set in. I don't know which way it will be, but I do think that that's going to be a factor in Monday's game.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I mean, obviously there's a lot at stake in this game for both of these teams. And certainly, you wish that Joe Burrow was able to play in this game and the rest of the season to make it a more interesting matchup at the very least. But at the same time, we just want to see these two teams end September well, finish September well, and get to October with a little bit of momentum here in the second quarter of the season.
Check out Sarah over at Locked On Broncos and James over at Locked On Bengals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's all I have for you on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Thank you so much for tuning in to the show. Enjoy your Sunday, enjoy football, and be sure you check out all of our experts across the Locked On Podcast Network for your team every day. Be sure to stay tuned as we'll be back here soon on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show.